Chapter 635. After visiting the aspiring throne mountain for a day, Mu Rong Qianji and his daughter returned to the guest house and settled down. Of course, Qin Wushuang served them. Just when he sent Mu Rong Qianji to the guest house, Elder Guan Qi found Qin Wushuang. Wushuang, the third chief, wants you to go to the upright morality hall. Mu Rong Qianji felt somewhat strange. Didn't they just separate? However, Qin Wushuang knew what was going on as he said to Mu Rong Qianji, "Lord Mu Rong, please rest for now. I'm going to see the chief." Although Mu Rong Qianji did not understand the situation, he did not ask much. "Go, don't worry about me." He followed Guan Qi to the upright morality hall. When he walked in, he saw that Qin Chongyang was alone. Qin Chongyang appeared to be at ease as he appeared incredibly relaxed. He did not show the attitude of a mountain storm that was about to arrive. Qin Wushuang walked in without leaving a trace. Qin Chongyang revealed a leisurely smile. "Wushuang, did Lord Mu Rong have a good time today?" Qin Wushuang did not expect that the third chief would use this topic to start conversation. "Lord Mu Rong has been beaming from ear to ear. He should have had a good time. The alliance between the floating snow house and the Qin clan is something he has been looking forward to for a long time." Qin Chongyang chuckled. "Yes, this time, Lord Mu Rong is an honored guest, and we cannot neglect him. Tomorrow, the second sect master would invite Lord Mu Rong to visit his immortal's cave. He would also invite Lord Mu Rong to cultivate with him." "Wushuang, do you understand the second chief's intention? Could it be that the second chief wants to help Lord Mu Rong comprehend the supreme Tao?" Qin Wushuang was emotionally moved. Qin Chongyang did not conceal it. "Yes, in the current Xian Yuan Mound, there are many elite warriors of the supreme Tao. Besides the totem clan with unfathomable depths, most of the other supreme Tao elite warriors are at the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates. Besides them, the other 4 first-rate powerhouses have elite warriors of the supreme Tao." Qin Wushuang more or less understood these situations as he nodded. Besides the supreme Tao elite warriors, there are elite warriors at the peak of the common mysterious stage. There are at least 20 of them in the Xian Yuan Mound. However, there were only 4 or 5 people who had the highest hopes of entering the divine path. Mu Rong Qianji and Luo Tongtian are both here. Qin Wushuang was deep in thought. To him, these 2 names were really 2 extremes. One was the father of his lover, and the other was his sworn enemy. Luo Tongtian has already been bribed by the heavenly punishing villa. Colluding with them is inevitable. If we allow Luo Tongtian to enter the supreme Tao stage, the heavenly punishing villa, the Sound of Thunder sect, and the heavenly Luo Daoist sect will join hands to deal with the Qin clan. Qin Chongyang also spoke with an incredibly solemn tone. Therefore, it is crucial for the floating snow house to form an alliance with the Qin clan. Between Lord Murong and Luo Tongtian, who would enter the divine path first, was also very important. Even if I cannot be 1 step ahead, it's best to not be later than that Luo Tongtian. Or else, perhaps great changes will occur to the situation at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Qin Wushuang knew what was going on even if he didn't say it aloud. Naturally, a great battle broke out. What if Lord Murong is 1 step ahead, or not slower than Luo Tongtian? Qin Wushuang asked. Qin Chongyang gave a long sigh. Then most likely the current situation will be maintained. Perhaps it will be maintained until 17 years later. 17 years later? Why would the number be accurate to 17 years later? Clearly, Qin Wushuang was somewhat confused. Qin Chongyang said with a smile, "Wushuang, for the situation at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, every 500 years there will be a cycle. Do you know why? The Heavenly Emperor will be replaced every 500 years. Is that right?" A burst of sharp lights flashed across Qin Chongyang's eyes as he chuckled. "Yes, it will be replaced every 500 years. The replacement of the Heavenly Emperor is only the climax of this pageant that happens once every 500 years. And in this pageant that happens once every 500 years, for the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates, some will cry and some will laugh. Some will leave and some will enter." "Oh, third chief, You're saying that the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates also compete and eliminate each other? That's right. The Heavenly Emperor 8 gates are all places with good feng shui. However, there are not many evergreen trees like the Qin clan. At the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, only the Qin clan, the Xian clan, and the Yun clan have remained among the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates since the immemorial era. They have never been eliminated. As for the other 5 positions, more or less, they have been replaced. From the immemorial era until now, it had been at least a few tens of thousands of years. For the pageant that happens once every 500 years, it would be a few dozen or 100 times. Most likely, it would be close to 200 times. It was not easy to not have a change of position after a few tens of thousands of years of inheritance. When Qin Wushuang heard this, suddenly, he was moved inwardly. Yun clan? Yes, the Yun clan. At the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, the Yun clan has held the position of Heavenly Emperor the most times. The Qin clan is second. The Xian clan is third. Suddenly, Qin Wushuang remembered that when he was at the Monkey King Mountain, he had met an elite warrior named Yun Shuechun who possessed unfathomable strength. Wushuang, what is it? When Qin Chongyang saw the flickering of Qin Wushuang's brows, he knew something was wrong. Third chief, is there a senior called Yun Shuechun in the Yun clan? Qin Wushuang could not help but ask. Yun Shuechun. Qin Chongyang was stunned. You know Yun Shuechun? It's like this. Qin Wushuang did not hide anything and told him about how he had met Yun Shuechun at the Monkey King Mountain. He did not even hide the fact that Yun Shuechun had taught him a divine skill. Qin Chongyang's expression was solemn. After hearing the story, his expression slowly calmed down and revealed a trace of a smile. Wushuang, this Yun Shuechun is indeed an elite warrior of the Yun clan. His strength, haha. Qin Wushuang asked curiously, how is his strength? I am afraid he is on par with the second chief. Qin Chongyang gave a long sigh. Now, the second chief is almost 3,000 years old. And that Yun Shuechun, do you know how old he is? He said he had some relationship with ancestor Qin Yu. Then he should not be more than 600 years old, right? That's right. This Yun Shuechun is only 500 years old. Qin Chongyang also admired Yun Shuechun greatly as he praised, and he has already entered the Supreme Tao stage for 400 years. In other words, he entered the Supreme Tao stage before the age of 100. Perhaps Qin Wushuang would not feel anything when he entered the Supreme Tao stage before the age of 100. However, in a Xian Yuan mound, an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao stage before the age of 100 was definitely a legendary existence. If a martial artist entered the Supreme Tao stage before the age of 100, certainly he would become a legend of the Xian Yuan mound and an influential figure of a certain era. He would be a legend like that Yun Shuechun. Only that Yun Shuechun had an indifferent personality and did not like to show off. Therefore, his reputation in the outside world did not reach the height he should have. However, although he did not value his personal reputation, it did not mean he had an undeserved reputation. With his age, he would not lose to those Supreme Tao elite warriors who were a few thousand years old. Naturally, the talent contained in this was not something ordinary Supreme Tao elite warriors could reach. When Qin Chongyang saw that Qin Wushuang was not surprised, he could not refrain from laughing. Wushuang, do you feel that entering the Supreme Tao stage before the age of 100 is nothing? Indeed, Qin Wushuang did not have much of an idea. After all, he was only at the profound void martial stage and far away from that Supreme Tao stage. Third chief, I have never made a dash for the Supreme Tao stage, so I don't know the concept of the Supreme Tao stage. However, hearing your words, it should be incredible, right? Qin Chongyang gave a long sigh. That's rather incredible. Wushuang, if you can make a dash for the Supreme Tao stage before the age of 100, certainly you will leave a heavy mark in the history of the Qin clan. How about it? Do you have confidence? Qin Chongyang asked with a chuckle. To a young man like Qin Wushuang, Qin Chongyang did not put on the airs of chief. Haha, for now, I would not dare to boast. However, since third chief has such high expectations, I must try hard no matter what. Yes, if you maintain your previous training speed, you'll have hope. However, don't be blindly optimistic. Before the perfect void martial stage, it's not difficult in the Xinyuan Mount. However, it's extremely difficult to enter the exquisite mysterious boundary stage from the perfect void martial stage. It's even more difficult to enter the supreme Tao stage from the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. Among 100 million martial artists, most likely not one supreme Tao elite warrior will appear. This could also be seen from the situation of each sect in the Xinyuan Mount. Not to mention those far away, just look at the Qin clan. Including the core disciples, there were hundreds of people at the elder level. At the honored warrior level, there were only 12 of them. The requirement for the elder was the perfect void martial stage. The requirement for the honored warrior was the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. Regardless of the exquisite mysterious boundary or the common mysterious boundary stage, one was qualified to become an honored warrior. There were 12 honored warriors and only 3 at the Supreme Tao stage. They were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. Therefore, the higher one's level, the more difficult it would be. The increase in difficulty would not be 1 or 2 times, but 10 times, 100 times, or even 1,000 times. Qin Wushuang did not belittle himself unduly. He felt that it would not be a problem for him to make a dash for the Supreme Tao stage. Only, he must take one step at a time and eat one mouthful of rice at a time. Indeed, it was difficult for him to estimate exactly when he could enter the Supreme Tao stage. However, it was not because he lacked confidence within 100 years. After all, he was only a little over 20 years old and was a few years away from 30 years old. Wushuang, I think I don't need to say any more words of encouragement. You child, you have a firm will and do not stick to the rules. Very good, very good. When Qin Chongyang said this, he actually laughed. A mischievous smile overflowed from the corner of his mouth. Wushuang, honored warrior Ji Huai has complained to me a few times today. He said that you're arrogant and don't take him, a venerable, seriously. Qin Wushuang gave a long sigh inwardly. After such a long detour, he finally got to the main topic. However, since he had already made up his mind, it did not matter. He said lightly, Honored warrior Ji Huai, I think you must have heard the words of his precious disciple. Biased listening will lead to the dark. Honored warrior Ji Huai will not be influenced by Qin Shaohong's one-sided words. That does not seem like the shrewdness of an honored warrior. You kid, you always act like an old man. Don't worry, everyone is very clear about Qin Shaohong's style. For this matter, there are a few people who follow Ji Huai to kick up a fuss. However, on the whole, everyone does not care. Everyone knows that honored warrior Ji Huai is protective of his disciples. Now, I will only ask you one question. Are you sure you want to proceed with this battle? I'm just afraid that Chief will not agree. Qin Wushuang said half-jokingly. Qin Chongyang laughed. You are cunning enough. Since you are the one who brought it up, the second sect master, and I will definitely escort you. Then please rest assured, sect leader. This battle will definitely achieve the desired results. Oh, the desired result? Qin Chongyang said meaningfully. Third chief, you should know the atmosphere of the ascending dragon slope better than me. If I can break those bad practices through this battle, what's the harm even if I lose? Qin Wushuang started to speak sarcastic words. Qin Chongyang laughed. If you say so, then I am relieved. It's because I know better than anyone that you will not lose. Qin Shaohong, this kid has good talent. Unfortunately, the training method of honored warrior Ji Huai is worthy of discussion. It's good, you can sharpen yourself. After he finished speaking, he instructed jokingly, Wushuang, nominally it is a battle of life and death. You must not play with your life. Enough is enough. If you want to win everyone's good impression, you must grasp this degree well. Perhaps many people would like you to dampen Qin Shaohong's limelight, but they would never be willing to see a true life and death battle inside the Qin clan. Qin Wushuang said with a stern voice, I am just afraid that Qin Shaohong will not think this way. Even if he doesn't think this way, what can he do? Don't tell me that Qin Shaohong can break your Supreme Tao shield defense? Kid, with the Supreme Tao shield, You are already in an invincible position. No matter how he fights, it will be a draw. Qin Chongyang shook his head helplessly. Grasp this opportunity and perform well. This time, I will build a good stage for you to soar and set you off. Initially, I thought this would take time. Unexpectedly, an opportunity has appeared. Wushuang, perhaps this battle is insignificant, but it will definitely be a battle where you stand out. As for your position in the Qin clan in the future, this battle will establish the foundation. Qin Wushuang laughed as he understood tacitly. Qin Chongyang did not speak anymore. Return to the Dragon Slope. Tomorrow, the Upright Morality Hall will gather all core members. Your battle will be the curtain raiser for this great gathering. Wushuang, for this battle, if you win, you will get an entrance ticket to the Illusion Heavenly Lake. Do your best. Today, I am distraught. I have persevered until now and am on the verge of collapse. Life is full of surprises, yet it must continue. Writing is my job. Regardless of what happens, the work must continue. Thank you for everyone's concern. Don't ask. I will slowly digest this anger and depression. Today, I will not make a list of things to say. I am not in the mood and have nothing to say. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chijian.com. More chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 636. Without a doubt, the best stage mentioned by Qin Chongyang was the selection for this spot. Although the exact content had not been announced, Qin Chongyang's words had given an obvious answer. Qin Wushuang returned to the ascending dragon slope, and after training for an entire night, he only felt refreshed. He knew that the chief planned to push him from the dark to the light. Although Qin Wushuang preferred to develop in a low-key manner, he knew clearly that a real man should not pass on his responsibilities. If he were to shrink back blindly, it would be a display of not wanting to shoulder the responsibility. Therefore, he decided to face the difficulties. No matter what, this was a challenge. Qin Wushuang woke up early, but unexpectedly, Qinlan woke up even earlier. When he saw Qin Wushuang, Qinlan greeted him with a beaming smile. Wushuang, you were too handsome yesterday. Qin Wushuang had a somewhat favorable impression of Qinlan. At least under the situation yesterday, this Qinlan did not hide. It meant that he had some strength of character. He smiled lightly. It's not that I'm handsome, but they were too wretched. Qinlan laughed mischievously and more or less wanted to curry favor with him. He moved closer and said, Wushuang, yesterday I contacted some foreign disciples and everyone exchanged their opinions. What? Qin Wushuang frowned slightly. He had roughly guessed what Qinlan wanted to say. However, he did not have much interest in such matters. It's like this. Now there are a few circles at the ascending dragon slope. We, the outer branch disciples, are ostracized. Therefore, everyone feels that it's necessary to set up a circle of our branch disciples. You see, in fact, the branch disciples were indeed somewhat sullen at the ascending dragon slope. However, the matter of small circles was precisely what Qin Wushuang disliked the most. This time, he set up the battle agreement with Qin Shaoong because he wanted to break this fixed circle. Considering from the long-term planning of the entire Qin clan, for sure such a small circle would not benefit the long-term development of the Qin clan. It would even become a burden to the clan's development. Qinlan, I can understand your feelings. Qin Wushuang did not lose his temper, but said patiently, however, there is only one Qin clan. If the disciples of the Qin clan were to form their own cliques due to personal feelings, the future of the Qin clan would be destroyed. Qinlan, a man must be self-reliant. Circles and small gangs are all unreliable. The Qin clan was able to stay at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain for tens and thousands of years without falling because of small circles and petty tricks. The Qin clan only had one strength of character, and that was unity. He would never allow internal strife to become the main theme of the Qin family. Therefore, not only do I not support your suggestion, I even detest it. Do you understand? Qinlan was tongue-tied. Clearly, she had not expected Qin Wushuang to say such a thing. For a moment, she was a little embarrassed. Her mouth was agape, but no words came out. Wu Shuang you are. Qinlan sighed. It's no wonder. Your strength is so strong that you can be as detached as senior brother Qin Taichong. You don't need a small circle at all. When Qin Wushuang saw that Qin Lan still did not understand his meaning, he shook his head helplessly. It seemed that the atmosphere of the ascending dragon slope had been deeply rooted in the hearts of the people, and it would be very difficult to change it in a short period of time. All right, don't say anything else. Get ready. We are about to gather at the Upright Morality Hall. Go to the Upright Morality Hall? Qin Lan blinked her eyes. Didn't Qin Xiaohong want to duel with you? Ha, a duel but not here. Qin Wushuang looked into the distance leisurely. Indeed, at this moment, all the core disciples had received the gathering notice through the communication jade plate. After Qin Lan had received it, she looked at Qin Wushuang with astonishment. Wushuang, how did you know to gather? Qin Lan, if you want to know the reason, then work hard to increase your strength. When you can stand out among the core disciples, perhaps you will be wrapped up when you no longer have the backward concept of these small circles. Qin Lan looked at Qin Wushuang, as if she had understood, yet not fully. She felt that this Qin Wushuang was too mysterious. A form of admiration emerged from the bottom of her heart. Let's go. Qin Wushuang called out to her and left swiftly. Qin Lan was muddle-headed and thoughtfully followed behind him unconsciously. Inside the Upright Morality Hall, gradually, all the core disciples had gathered. This time, the gathering order was of a high level as all the core disciples must be present. This time, Qin Wushuang had observed carefully. Indeed, as Qin Lan had said, there were small circles in 2s and 3s. The core disciples in the same circle had gathered together consciously. Qin Wushuang observed that there were a total of 5 people with high popularity. These 5 people were all at the perfect void martial stage. They were also the 5 most outstanding people among the core disciples. Qin Wushuang had already sparred with 4 of them. They were Qin Xiaohong, Qin Hao, Qin Shi, and Qin Hongyan. The other one did not join Qin Xiaohong's team on that day. This person was called Qin Jining and appeared somewhat unconventional. However, this did not affect his popularity in the slightest. Next to him, the number of core disciples that had gathered surpassed Qin Xiaohong. Although this Qin Jining had a skinny figure, he gave people a refreshing feeling. The only regret was that this person's temperament was somewhat cold. Compared to the others, he appeared somewhat out of place. However, Qin Wushuang had a better impression of this Qin Jining. Of course, the main reason was that this Qin Jining had not participated in the incident with Qin Xiaohong. With these 5 people all present, plus Qin Wushuang, the 6 of them were clearly the focal figures among the core disciples. Of course, the most focal point among the core disciples had not arrived yet. It's strange, today is not the promised day of the gathering. Why are they gathering everyone? Most of the core disciples were not well informed as they were asking each other. Who knows? Perhaps something important is about to happen. Haha, are you amateurs? Haven't you heard? Senior brother Qin Xiaohong is challenging the new Qin Wushuang. These 2 have set a life and death challenge. Like a heavy bomb, this news had instantly spread across the entire Upright Morality Hall. Since there were no honored warriors or elders present, the core disciples were even more unrestrained as they started to discuss. Clearly, these core disciples also enjoyed the liveliness. The boredom from their daily training had made them extremely sensitive to all kinds of gossip. When they heard that someone was going to engage in a life and death duel, instantly they became interested. Senior brother Qin Xiaohong? Is he going to make a move himself? Of course. TSK. It's truly a grand occasion for a perfect void martial stage to make a move. This time, most likely, the chief is paying great attention. Senior brother Xiaohong's teacher is honored warrior Ji Huai. His great power. Wouldn't that Qin Wushuang be miserable? Ah, you say that Qin Wushuang. How long has it been since he arrived at the aspiring Throne Mountain? How did he get into a conflict with senior brother Qin Xiaohong? Isn't he too lacking in insight? At our ascending dragon slope, besides senior brother Qin Taichong, Even senior brother Qin Jining might not win against senior brother Qin Shaoong, right? This time, I'm afraid this Qin Wushuang is truly going to lose face. You say that Qin Wushuang is truly a troublemaker. A guy from the human countries had provoked senior brother Qin Shaoong for no reason. He is deliberately finding trouble for himself. That's hard to say. Without knowing the inside story, it's hard to say who is provoking whom. In fact, that Qin Wushuang seems to know how to stir up trouble. Or else, he would not have fought with the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. That's not how it is said. When the heavenly Luo Taoist sect bullied him, it's natural for Qin Wushuang to resist. This is not considered stirring up trouble, right? Besides, senior brother Qin Shaoong is such a powerful person. If he did not provoke others, would others dare to provoke him? It's hard to say the inside story of this matter. Each of these core disciples had their own opinions and ideas. However, in general, most of them felt sorry for Qin Wushuang. Clearly, they had all heard of Qin Wushuang's reputation of dealing with the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. However, seeing was believing. They had never seen Qin Wushuang's reputation and did not know how powerful he was. However, many people had witnessed Qin Shaohong's strength before. Therefore, regardless of who had provoked whom, everyone's overall feeling was that the difference between Qin Wushuang and Qin Shaohong was great. After all, Qin Shaohong had the strength of the perfect void martial stage. Naturally, Qin Wushuang would not be bored enough to put these discussions to heart. Like a cool breeze brushing past his ears, he did not care about it. Currently, his heart was as calm as still water. To him, such personal grudges were only the size of a sesame seed. Of course, he would not care too much about it. Qinlan was mingling with those foreign core disciples. No one knew what they were discussing. From time to time, those disciples of the branch would look at Qin Wushuang's location. However, they only glanced at him for a moment and immediately looked away. Clearly, they did not dare to make excessive eye contact with Qin Wushuang. This Qin Wushuang had already formed a form of deterrence in their hearts. Just as everyone was discussing spiritedly and guessing, the sound of footsteps came from the outside. Groups of elders also kept walking in. Next, the 12 honored warriors also came in one after another. Along with the 12 honored warriors, there was a tall and sturdy young man. This person had a simple appearance and appeared to be extremely simple and clumsy. However, when all the core disciples saw this person, they revealed a look of admiration. Senior brother Taichung. Senior brother Taichung is here. Each of them greeted him. This tall and sturdy guy was Qin Taichung. He had a square face and appeared to be imposing without being angry. When he heard everyone's greeting, he waved his hand and laughed straightforwardly. You are all here. Last time when Qin Wushuang was discussing the title of the core disciple, Qin Taichung was too far away from the aspiring throne mountain and did not make it back. This was the first time he saw Qin Taichung. Seeing this person's extraordinary temperament and his majestic appearance, he also nodded secretly in his heart. This Qin Taichung was a good man. Qin Taichung laughed heartily and walked toward Qin Wushuang. He asked enthusiastically, "You should be junior brother Qin Wushuang, right? Senior brother Taichung, I have heard a lot about you." Qin Wushuang did not neglect him. His first impression of Qin Taichung was very good. Qin Taichung patted Qin Wushuang's shoulder and said appreciatively, "Good guy, I have heard about your story. You have done well. Later, let's go to the second chief's place to ask for wine." Ha. After he finished speaking, he pulled Qin Wushuang's arm and laughed. "Come, sit with me." Qin Taichung's personality was straightforward. His every movement had the temperament of a leader. Although his invitation was somewhat rude, it did not appear to be too rude. When people accepted it, they would not feel uneasy in their hearts. However, unexpectedly, Qin Taichung's action had caused all the core disciples' minds to become active. Their reactions were all complicated and different. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.qitian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 637. When he saw Qin Wushuang walking forward side by side with Qin Taichung, A trace of imperceptible ruthlessness flashed across Qin Xiaohong's eyes. On what basis? On what basis did senior brother Taichung think highly of this kid the first time he met him? Qin Xiaohong felt incredibly dissatisfied and unbalanced inwardly. This Qin Wushuang is fishing for fame and compliments. Even senior brother Taichung was deceived by him. Today I will expose his true face and beat him back to his original form. Qin Xiaohong thought with resentment inwardly. Qin Lan and the other foreign branch disciples were even more astonished when they saw their senior brother Taichung, whom they admired, showing such favor to Qin Wushuang. Even Qin Jining, who was always calm and collected, felt that senior brother's action was somewhat excessive. Just as everyone's little thoughts were active, Qin Yunran and Qin Chongyang arrived together and immediately cleared the scene. Instantly, all the discussions disappeared. Qin Yunran still appeared radiant with happiness. Qin Chongyang, on the other hand, always maintained his refined and calm manner. He gave people the feeling that he would not be startled in the face of chaos. Qin Yunran sat down on the seat of the chief and laughed. Third, as usual, you speak. Qin Chongyang was used to Qin Yunran's style and did not evade. He said with a clear voice, "Everyone, this time, I have gathered you here to talk about a few matters. The first matter is that the totem clan of the Illusion Heavenly Lake, the Karakoram Immortal Clan, is going to host the 10,000-year pilgrimage pageant. They are inviting all important sects from the forbidden spiritual zones to participate. Each of the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates will have 6 spots. We have all agreed that one elder will take 5 younger ones. Therefore, among you, 5 people will be selected, and the second chief will take you to the Illusion Heavenly Lake. This is a fortuitous opportunity that only appears once in 10,000 years. The Karakoram Immortal Clan is the totem clan of the Illusion Heavenly Lake and is not to be underestimated. All sects attach great importance to it. Of course, these core disciples knew clearly what the totem clan meant. Therefore, when they heard that this matter was related to the Karakoram Immortal Clan, each of them felt complicated. Without a doubt, everyone was fascinated by the totem clan. However, for 5 spots to be selected from 200 or 300 core disciples, the probability was not optimistic. Especially the core disciples whose strength was not outstanding. Their feelings were even more complicated. Even though he knew that the chances of being chosen were slim, he couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart when this opportunity was right in front of him. Everyone wanted to give it a try. To everyone, the totem clan was a monumental existence. To the Xian Yuan clan, the totem powerhouse of the Xian Yuan mound, everyone only knew about the Xian Yuan clan. However, no one had seen the totem clan. How could he not be tempted by such an opportunity? Qin Chongyang continued, "From your expressions, I can see that 5 spots are very few. Therefore, the selection would be very difficult. The second sect master and I have discussed for an entire night, and we have already come up with a selection process. First of all, Qin Taichung's strength is outstanding. He will be exempted from the selection and will be directly nominated. I believe everyone has no objections to this, right?" Qin Taichung smiled. Apparently, he had expected this and was not surprised. To give Qin Taichung special privileges, it was impossible for these core disciples of the ascending dragon slope to raise any objections. After all, Qin Taichung's strength was extraordinary and he was no longer on the same level as everyone else. For your information, senior brother Qin Taichung had broken through the shackles of the Void Martial stage and was an elite warrior that had successfully entered the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. This strength was enough for him to stand shoulder to shoulder with the 12 honored warriors. Compared to these core disciples, of course he had surpassed them and left them in the dust. The exquisite mysterious boundary stage was different than the Void Martial stage. The Void Martial stage was to merge with the sky. In fact, the exquisite mysterious boundary stage was to shatter the sky and step onto the path of the Supreme Tao. To put it precisely, the exquisite mysterious boundary stage was not an independent stage, but a transitional stage to the Supreme Tao. Therefore, the exquisite mysterious boundary stage only had 2 stages. First was the profound, mysterious boundary stage, then the common mysterious boundary stage. Of course, countless martial artists have been able to break through the void martial stage and enter the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. However, the majority had died at this exquisite mysterious boundary stage and could not truly enter the supreme Tao stage. Despite this fact, Qin Taichung at the profound, mysterious boundary stage was enough to look down on all the core disciples. Therefore, when Qin Taichung received special privileges, even someone as proud and arrogant as Qin Shaoong could not say anything. Could he not be convinced? That would be asking for trouble. Now, everyone was more concerned about the rules of the upcoming selection. Qin Chongyang said with a smile, "The rule of the Tianxian land is that the strong are respected. This is the natural law in the martial arts world. Therefore, for this selection, the most outstanding ones are the core disciples with powerful strength." As soon as he spoke these words, Qin Shaohong and the others were secretly delighted. Apart from Qin Taichung, the most powerful ones were of course them, at the perfect void martial stage. Qin Jining, Qin Shaohong, Qin Hao, Qin Hongyan, Qin Shi, these 5 core disciples have outstanding strength and are at the perfect void martial stage. Therefore, they're set as the seeded candidates. For the other disciples, if there are any challengers, you can register with Elder Guanxi. You can challenge any of the seeded candidates. If the challenger defeats the seeded candidate, they will automatically replace their position and become the new seeded candidate. When no one challenges, the last 5 seeded candidates will participate in the competition for the 4 spots. By that time, we will announce the selection rules. Instantly, Qin Chongyang's words were like a basin of cold water that poured onto the heads of many core disciples. One must say that challenging those 5 was asking for trouble. To the majority of the core disciples, it was impossible for them to win if they challenged those 5. Of course, they had no reason to refuse. Who asked them to be inferior to others? Of course, there were a few core disciples who felt they had good strength and were qualified to challenge. Without hesitation, they went to register with Elder Guanxi. In a moment, close to 10 core disciples had registered to participate. Qin Taichung turned around and asked, "Wu Shuang, you're not going to register?" Qin Wushuang said with a smile, "No rush." Elder Guanxi raised his voice and said, "Those who want to register, hurry up. When the time is up, you will not be qualified to register." Those who truly wanted to register had already done so. For those who were hesitant, when they saw the temperament of those 5 people, their last trace of hope had instantly turned into ashes. Although those 5 people had a calm expression, their temperament seemed to want to swallow people whole. At this moment, whoever went to challenge them would be deliberately not giving them face. When it was almost time, Qin Wushuang stood up and walked before Elder Guanxi. Elder Guanxi said with a smile, "Wushuang, I already added your name automatically." Qin Wushuang said with a bitter smile, "Elder Guanxi, haha, now everyone is looking forward to the opening battle between you and Shaoong." Qin Wushuang touched his nose. So the chief had already made arrangements. He had already registered his name beforehand and arranged for him to challenge Qin Shaoong. There was no need for him to worry. Soon, the registration list was organized. Including Qin Wushuang, there were exactly 10 challengers. Qin Chongyang looked at the list and said with a smile, "Very good. I was worried that the challenge would not be fair. Now there are exactly 10 spots. To ensure fairness, each person must have 2 challengers. If you have any special requests, you can bring it up individually. If not, we will draw lots. How about it?" Generally speaking, unless there was a major personal grudge, no one would take the initiative to challenge someone at this time. However, considering the precious spots this time, these challengers did not hesitate to offend people. "I want to challenge Senior Brother Qin Shi. I want to challenge Senior Brother Qin Hao." Immediately, 3 or 4 people proposed the person they wanted to challenge. Theoretically, those 5 people were all at the perfect void martial stage. It seemed that it would be the same thing to challenge anyone. However, since they were all at the perfect void martial stage, it seemed that these people had a rough idea of who had a higher voice and who had a lower status. I challenged Qin Xiaohong. A different voice sounded lightly from the crowd. Challenge Qin Xiaohong? Everyone felt that they had heard it wrong. Following the voice, Qin Wushuang raised his hand. However, there was no trace of joking on his face. He had challenged Qin Hao, Qin Shi, and the others because these few were publicly recognized as not as popular as Qin Xiaohong and Qin Jining. For your information, besides senior brother Qin Taichung, Qin Xiaohong and Qin Jining had always been publicly recognized as second or third. Only, they had never ranked who was first or second. With Qin Xiaohong's tyrannical and forceful personality, no one was willing to take the initiative to challenge him. Therefore, when everyone saw Qin Wushuang step out, they suddenly realized that the previous rumor was true. Qin Chongyang revealed an indifferent smile. Wushuang, I already know about the arranged battle between you and Xiaohong. In this case, how about you and Xiaohong to be the opening battle? Of course I will obey your orders, Chief, Qin Wushuang answered lightly. He did not even look at Qin Xiaohong and treated him as heir. Qin Xiaohong did not dare to fall behind. Xiaohong has no objection. After he had finished speaking, he glared at Qin Wushuang. At this time, there was no need for him to be reserved. Not to mention, being reserved was never Qin Xiaohong's style. He wanted to gain the upper hand by a show of strength, be domineering, and subdue the enemy without fighting. Qin Wushuang turned a blind eye to Qin Xiaohong's pretentious actions. He walked to his seat leisurely and said to Qin Taichung leisurely, Senior brother Taichung, let's drink together later. Qin Taichung laughed. All right. When Qin Xiaohong saw Qin Wushuang ignoring him, his lungs were about to explode from anger. However, now was not the time to explode. He could only feel resentment inwardly. Kid, I will let you be arrogant for a while. When we get on the martial arts stage, I will make you unable to cry even if you want to. Besides a few special requests, in the end, the remaining challengers could not throw away their face and chose by drawing lots. Soon, everyone's opponents were arranged. The Qin clan was incredibly efficient as the rules were set. The next thing to do was to start the challenges. Instantly, those core disciples became excited. If they were somewhat disappointed in the beginning, when they thought that the opening battle was the highlight, everyone's depressed mood was swept away. To be able to see senior brother Qin Xiaohong make a move and compete with the famous Qin Wushuang, they did not come to the Upright Morality Hall in vain. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 638. The martial arts practice ground of the Qin clan was at the Heavenly Cauldron Plain. The terrain was vast and empty. At the high point of the aspiring throne mountain, clouds and mist surrounded the place, giving off a myriad of meteorological phenomena. Being able to compete at the Heavenly Cauldron Plain was a form of recognition to one's strength. Qin Xiaohong was filled with anger as he already stood in the center of the stage. With a fierce expression, he appeared as if he was going to eat someone. When they saw this scene, those core disciples who did not get along well with Qin Wushuang all broke out in cold sweat for him. Inwardly, they were all praying for Qin Wushuang. They hoped that this Qin Wushuang would ruthlessly defeat Qin Xiaohong's arrogance. Qin Wushuang looked around with his torch-like eyes and saw through everyone's expression. Inwardly, he snickered. It seems this Qin Xiaohong does not know how to conduct himself. He slowly walked up the stage and shot a casual glance at Qin Xiaohong. Qin Wushuang, today, let me expose your undeserved reputation. Qin Xiaohong said with an evil grin. His tone was filled with resentment. Qin Wushuang ignored Qin Xiaohong's pretentious actions. Instead, he turned around and said to the two chiefs, before the duel, I have some words that I need to say. Would it be possible for me to say them? Qin Yunran waved his hand casually. The Qin clan has never been a one-man show. Wushuang, if you have something to say, it's a good thing to have ideas. Clearly, this was a form of instigation. Initially, honored warrior Ji Huai wanted to berate Qin Wushuang and asked him to speak less nonsense. Upon hearing Qin Yunran's words, he withdrew the words on the tip of his tongue. He said angrily, "Qin Wushuang, you are not stalling for time, right? Honored warrior Ji Huai, I haven't even spoken. How can you be so sure that I am stalling for time?" When honored warrior Ji Huai was asked by Qin Wushuang, he was instantly speechless. The few honored warriors on the side advised, "Ji Huai, don't get angry with a young man." Just as the second chief said, "It's a good thing for a young man to have ideas." Honored Sir Ji Huai snorted, but did not say anything else. He just stared coldly at Qin Wushuang, his eyes flashing with a hint of coldness. Qin Wushuang smiled faintly, cleared his throat, and said in a clear voice, "Ladies and gentlemen, I, Qin Wushuang, am young and inexperienced." Ever since he came to the aspiring throne mountain from the human countries, he had always kept a low profile and had never planned to have any conflicts with any disciples of the same sect. Today, I am challenging senior brother Qin Shaohong not because I, Qin Wushuang, like to provoke others, but because I have no other choice. Immediately, Qin Wushuang recounted the matter of Qin Shaohong coming to provoke him. Qin Shaohong only stared at Qin Wushuang with a gloomy face, expressionless. In his heart, he was thinking, "I'll let you flaunt your mouth for now. When I make my move, I'll let you know my power." After Qin Wushuang finished speaking, he asked indifferently, "Senior brother Shaohong, I didn't fabricate these words out of thin air. I didn't slander you for no reason, right?" Qin Shaohong said coldly, "Just when are you going to stop talking nonsense?" "No," Qin Wushuang said with a firm tone and a determined expression. "This is definitely not nonsense. If you were an offspring of the heavenly punishing villa or the Sound of Thunder sect, I would have made a move without a second word, regardless of life or death. However, regardless of the conflict between you and me, in the end, it's between the offspring of the Qin clan. For these words, I need to spit them out." Qin Chongyang revealed a solemn expression, yet he did not express his opinion. Qin Yunran still maintained a smile and declined to comment. Honored Sir Ji Huai gave a snort. However, since the two chiefs did not speak, despite having a belly full of anger, it was inappropriate for him to say anything. "Qin Wushuang, you and I are standing here. Are we going to decide the victor with our words or with our strength? I think you are putting the cart before the horse," Qin Shaohong said angrily. Qin Wushuang did not buy into Qin Shaohong's words as he still appeared at ease. "Senior brother Shaohong, since you are already standing on a martial arts stage, are you still worried that you will not have the chance to perform in this battle? Who has the patience to listen to your nonsense? Everyone is here to watch the martial arts competition." Qin Shaohong directly used the crowd as a shield. "Senior brother Shaohong, you are so afraid of me saying it. Are you feeling guilty?" Qin Shaohong's face turned purple from anger as he scolded. "I am feeling guilty? I think you are really feeling guilty, right? Otherwise, why haven't you made a move yet?" "Qin Shaohong, it is very easy to make a move. I will only ask you a few questions. Do you dare to answer me?" Qin Shaohong gave tit for tat. Why would I not dare? At this time, he had also made up his mind. No matter what, in the end, he would have to rely on his strength to speak. Qin Wushuang nodded. "All right, let me ask you, who set the rules of the ascending dragon slope? Although I am from a branch outside, before I entered the mountain, whether it is the chiefs or the elders, they have all warned me about the things that I should pay attention to. However, I have never heard that the ascending dragon slope has such rules. You set the rules privately, forming a small circle to exclude the disciples of the branch. Is this true? The rules are not set by me. They have always been there in the ascending dragon slope. Don't try to throw dirty water on me. Is that so?" Qin Wushuang gave a cold sneer and turned around to ask with a clear voice, "Two chiefs, Qin Shaohong once said that the public area of the ascending dragon slope is his private territory. And those public areas have already been divided into private territories by them. Does the Qin clan really have such rules?" Qin Chongyang said with a cold sneer, "When has there ever been such rules?" Qin Shaohong knew that it would be difficult to deny it today. "Third chief, this Qin Wushuang, is deliberately framing me. I do not mean it that way. What private territory, those were all created by my friends to join the fun. We did not truly divide it. Did not divide it? Then why is it that when my subordinates were training in the public area, senior brother Xiaoong kept on saying that he was trespassing on your territory? I remember that besides your own yard that is private territory, the rest of the ascending dragon slope are all public areas, right? Qin Wushuang's words were not only directed at Qin Xiaoong. He had even brought in the leaders of the other core disciples. Each of Qin Hao and the others revealed a displeased expression. Qin Wushuang's words were not only slapping Qin Xiaohong's face, but also slapping their faces. They had always come to a mutual understanding regarding the hidden rules of the ascending dragon slope. No one had ever brought this matter to the surface. However, this Qin Wushuang had exposed it in public. Qin Xiaohong's chest was burning with anger as he wished to swallow Qin Wushuang whole. He asked viciously, "You already asked, can we make a move now?" Qin Wushuang laughed. However, this laughter was filled with bitterness. Qin Xiaohong, it was difficult for the ancestors of the Qin clan to establish their business. Now, the current situation is not easy. The disciples of the Qin clan that I know, even the 100-leaf Qin clan, are running for the Qin clan situation and spilling their blood. Also, senior Qin Shishuan would rather die than submit under the joint attack of the Sound of Thunder sect and the heavenly punishing villa. How admirable is that? However, for the things you have done at the ascending dragon slope, not only do I not admire you, I despise you. You are being stuck in your own ways and are ruining the future of the Qin clan. The Qin clan needs to work together and advance, not to kill each other. If internal strife becomes the main theme of the Qin clan, I dare to predict that the foundation of the Qin clan will be ruined in the hands of our generation. The more Qin Wushuang spoke, the angrier he became. He took a step forward and urged his temperament all of a sudden. He said with an austere voice, "If there truly is such hidden rules at the ascending dragon slope, I, Qin Wushuang, am willing to sacrifice my life to break this rule. Qin Xiaohong, the battle to break this rule will start with you." When he said this, Qin Wushuang grabbed with his hand and waved it in the air. He already held the He Jimin breaking formation spear in his hand. Lights shot in all directions from his entire body, and his imposing manner was like a rainbow. Ever since Qin Wushuang had entered the aspiring throne mountain, he had finally revealed his outstanding side. He had revealed his true strength. Even honored warrior Ji Huai was greatly astonished. The strength of this Qin Wushuang was above his expectations. In fact, it had far exceeded his expectations. Especially that He Jimin breaking formation spear. It was so familiar. It was still full of aggressiveness and awe-inspiring. Just like how Qin Yu had used it to gallop through the heavenly Emperor Mountain. Qin Wushuang gave a long whistle. The unfinished wish of my ancestor, Qin Wushuang, let me inherit it. Qin Xiaoong, use all your skills. Qin Wushuang stood with his spear and did not use any supreme Dao weapon at all. What graceful spiritual bow! What supreme Dao shield! He did not want to use any of them. He was going to use his true strength, his incomparable talent, and his body that had been baptized by the supreme Dao to crush Qin Xiaohong's arrogance. He would not leave any room for ridicule. When Qin Xiaohong saw Qin Wushuang's thunderous temperament, he also drew a breath of cold air. A peculiar light flashed through his pupils. With a loud shout, he also pulled out a long blade. Like a bright silver moon, cold light radiated in all directions. This weapon was the cold moon water-breaking blade, used by Ji Huai in the past. It was equally famous as the He Jimin breaking formation spear. As soon as these two great weapons were revealed, the people of the older generation instantly sighed. Vaguely, they seemed to have seen Qin Yu, Qin Huai from the past, Ji Huai's name, when he was a core disciple. Qin Xiaoong gave a cold whistle and shook his wrist. Instantly, the silver moonlight overflowed. It extended from his wrist to his shoulder and spread throughout his entire body. Shua! The incomparably sharp, crescent moon-like blade broke through the air. This blade had condensed into a void. As soon as it was swept out, it seemed to have suddenly disappeared from the void. Almost in the blink of an eye, the blade light suddenly pierced through the void. Ignoring the distance of space, it directly slashed to a position 3 zhang in front of Qin Wuxuang. The blade that was originally 3 feet long suddenly expanded to a length of more than 3 zhang and cut the entire void into 2 halves. With a crashing sound, Qin Wuxuang's body was instantly split into 2 halves. The core disciples who were watching the battle immediately cried out in surprise. How is this possible? Killed with 1 slash? How is this possible? Just as they thought. How is this possible? The 2 halves of the broken body scattered to the sides. Numerous afterimages soared into the sky. From dim to bright, they continued to rise until they finally condensed into a solid body in midair. Qin Wuxuang's body had already soared into the sky. With a shake of his arms, 2 enormous wings bloomed out from his back. Majestic and awe-inspiring, this scene immediately caused the spectators below the stage to shout out. Too cool. This was simply too cool. Qin Wuxuang's body technique to avoid this blade had not completely conquered them. However, he suddenly grew a pair of wings and soared into the sky in a heroic manner, like a divine soldier descending from the heavens. This kind of psychological deterrence was the most shocking. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 639. When Qin Shaohong saw such a sudden change in Qin Wuxuang, he was also greatly astonished. However, in the end, he was the one involved. A trace of astonishment flashed across his face as he urged his dantian on and soared into the sky. Raising the blade light, he slashed upward. Carrying a long tail, this backhand slash shot up high into the sky. Like a meteor chasing after the moon, it emitted a silver explosion of light that was as cold as water. Duo! Qin Wuxuang gave a loud roar and pointed with the hegemon breaking formation spear. A surge of torrent shot out from the tip of the spear, the raging fire-deep core move. Another spear move, the cold, ice-deep core move. Another spear move, the earth-splitting deep core move. In one breath, Qin Wuxuang thrusted 3 spear moves. The speed was as fast as a spear move. It was completed in one breath. In terms of speed and temperament, there was a form of domineering aura. When the 3 spear lights arrived at the same time, they collided with Qin Shaohong's blade light and exploded with a loud bang. Boom! The horrifying sound of the qi explosion shot out circles after circles of colorful and dazzling air currents. As soon as Qin Shaohong's blade power was stopped, he felt a burst of slight suffocation in his chest. Feeling greatly astonished, he followed the momentum of the counterattack airflow and retreated rapidly. On the other hand, Qin Wuxuang moved forward courageously. With a casual slide of the purple cloud yin-yang wings, he dispersed this rebounding power. With this comparison, the advantage of the purple cloud yin-yang wings was displayed. To disperse the rebounding power, Qin Shaohong needed to use his body to reduce it. Using the purple cloud yin-yang wings, Qin Wuxuang could easily reduce the influence of the air pressure to a negligible level. Qin Wuxuang, what kind of sorcery are you using? Qin Shaohong shouted coldly to encourage himself. He felt that this Qin Wuxuang was a freak. Qin Wuxuang said lightly, "Why do you care what divine skill I use?" With a proud roar, he dashed forward in large strides. Like a violent storm, he kept thrusting and smashing with the long spear from his hand. This rapid attack was the 4th move created by the Qin family, nuclear explosion move. Once the attack was launched, it was as if the airflow had exploded. All the attacks were like a shockwave that expanded outwards, rushing forward one after another. Coupled with the speed of the purple cloud yin-yang wings, Qin Wuxuang's movements caused more and more figures to appear in the sky. In an instant, the sky was filled with Qin Wuxuang's afterimages, pressing in from all directions. What did it mean to cover the sky and cover the earth? This was what it meant to cover the sky and cover the earth. Qin Shaoong did not even have time to react before he was suppressed by this imposing manner. The cold moon water splitting saber danced in an airtight manner, defending the vital parts of his body. His feet could not help but glide backwards. Not to mention taking a step forward, it was difficult to even defend where he was. The only choice he had was to continuously retreat and flee. For a moment, the originally evenly matched battle suddenly became a one-sided attack and defense drill. Like a mad demon, Qin Wushuang's spear moves brought forth in earth-shattering, imposing manner. It shook the surrounding sky to emit continuous, miserable explosions. The clouds and airflow in the surrounding also rolled and stirred as the wind and clouds changed. Now, Qin Wushuang realized that he had such tremendous potential for this attack, not to mention Qin Shaoong. Even Qin Wushuang himself did not expect it. This attack simply had the tendency to shatter the sky. Shattering the sky was a move only at the exquisite, mysterious boundary stage. However, vividly, Qin Wushuang felt that his current stage was only a thin layer of paper away from that exquisite, mysterious boundary stage that could shatter the sky. Haha. Third, this spear is still that He Jimin breaking formation spear. However, this spear technique seems to have surpassed the predecessors. Suddenly, Qin Yinran gave a long sigh as if he had pointed something out. Qin Shongyang was also intoxicated as he watched. It's too unbelievable. I thought he would use a supreme Dao weapon. I didn't expect, although he didn't finish his words, the implied meaning was already very clear. Without using a supreme Dao weapon, he was able to beat Qin Shaoong into such a sorry state. If he were to use a supreme Dao weapon, then Qin Shaoong would likely not be able to do anything and the battle would be even more one-sided. The person who was the most shocked was none other than Honorable Ji Huai. He knew that this Qin Wushuang was exceptional and had also deliberately overestimated Qin Wushuang's strength. However, at this very moment, when he truly saw Qin Wushuang's attack, he finally realized how frightening of a potential this youngster from the human countries possessed. He was simply like a volcano. Once he erupts, the might of his eruption was simply unimaginable. Qin Yu was very powerful back then, but he was not as demonic as his descendant. To think that the human countries, that barren land, could they possibly nurture an even more powerful descendant? Honorable Ji Huai was very unconvinced and unreconciled in his heart. He felt that if this Qin Wushuang were to win against Qin Shaoong, then it would be a direct slap to his old face. This sort of feeling caused him to feel even more strange. When other people who were not involved saw Qin Wushuang's methods, they all started to inquire about each other. I say, little brother, is this Qin Wushuang truly only a little over 20 years old? Isn't that right? Isn't this too astonishing? A little over 20 years old. Even Taichung did not have such abnormal strength back then, right? This Qin Wushuang is too abnormal, right? Not to mention the generation of elders. Even those honored warriors were secretly smacking their lips under Qin Wushuang's frantic attacks. Perhaps to them, this attack would not pose a threat for the time being. However, when they remembered Qin Wushuang's age and the potential he had displayed, a perilous situation arose inwardly. They were both surprised and joyful. The eye sockets of a few old guys turned red and their lips started to tremble. Inwardly, they were all thinking, could it be that the ancestors of the Qin clan had manifested themselves and the Qin clan had finally welcomed a genius that could lead the Qin clan out of their predicament and walk towards glory? Since the older generation was acting this way, those core disciples were even more fascinated. Initially, a portion of the core disciples who looked down on Qin Wushuang were also dumbstruck. Now, they understood that Qin Wushuang was not acting pretentious, but had genuine talent. The most excited ones were Qin Lan and the other foreign disciples. When they saw Qin Wushuang unleashing his divine power and beating the usually insufferably arrogant Qin Shaoong in such an embarrassing state, each of them felt extremely supportive. If they had not considered the negative influence, they would have already cheered publicly and encouraged Qin Wushuang. Since Qin Wushuang had seized the upper hand, naturally he would not give Qin Shaohong the chance to make a comeback. However, in the end, Qin Shaohong was at the perfect void martial stage. His strength was definitely not an undeserved reputation. Although he was out of breath from Qin Wushuang's chaotic attacks, he did not lose his footing. Suddenly, he urged the blade light, and that cold moon water-breaking blade started to spin at a high speed. Like a giant windmill, it spun rapidly in the high sky. It congealed into a shield-like airflow and kept spreading out. It blocked Qin Wushuang's attack just in time. Qin Shaohong's body twisted all of a sudden and forcefully pulled out horizontally from his side. This Qin Shaohong had used such a method to jump out of the battle. When Qin Wushuang saw that his move had failed and he had let Qin Shaohong jump out of the battle circle, he was not discouraged. With a roaring laugh, he withdrew the hegemon breaking formation spear. From afar, he turned the head of the spear and pointed it at the direction where Qin Shaohong was standing. With a face as cold as frost, Qin Shaohong gave a long whistle. "Qin Wushuang, you've finished your 3 axes, right? Then take my 3 blades." After he had finished speaking, Qin Shaohong urged the body of the blade, and again, a dazzling silver light burst out from the back of the blade. Like a wave rolling over, in a flash, Qin Shaohong's body had disappeared into the sky. In all directions, there was only a layer of silver light and not a trace of life. This Qin Shaohong had concealed himself in the sky. He had even concealed himself and his blade. To elite warriors at the void martial stage, such invisible attacks were not strange. However, only warriors at the perfect void martial stage could completely conceal the presence of the void. Qin Wushuang stood with the spear in his hand, yet he was calm and collected. A trace of a light smile spilled from the corner of his mouth. From his expression, not only did he not feel any fear, there was a form of calmness as if he had a card up his sleeve. Qin Wushuang rolled his palm and an object appeared in his hand. He sent it to the hegemon breaking formation spear and attached it to the handle of the spear. Observant finger jade plate. Lu Xinluo's miraculous skill had allowed Qin Wushuang to seize countless opportunities when he used this observant finger jade plate. Of course, this time would not be an exception. Regardless of how miraculous Qin Shaohong's changes were, this observant finger jade plate could clearly lock onto his position. However, since this Qin Shaohong felt that his special skill was exceptional, of course Qin Wushuang would not mind letting him perform it. To defeat someone like Qin Shaohong, one had to defeat him when he was at his proudest. Only then would one be able to truly defeat his pride. Only by defeating him in the skill that he was most proud of would one be able to tear his so-called pride into pieces. Suddenly, bursts of powerful air explosions emerged in the sky. In all directions, specks of starlight kept appearing. Under the cover of Qin Shaohong's silver light, such starlight appeared extremely malevolent. However, Qin Wushuang seemed to have entered a meditative state. He did not notice these air explosions and did not pay any attention to them. How could he not see that this was Qin Shaohong's bluff? He had deliberately lured him into letting his imagination run wild. These air explosions were meant to confuse people's eyes and ears. There was only one true attack. At this moment, it had not appeared. On the contrary, people beneath the stage were breathing rapidly due to nervousness. Seeing the surrounding silver snakes spitting out like lightning and thunder, everyone felt that this Qin Wushuang was a little too arrogant. However, Qin Wushuang's eyes were half closed from beginning to end. He turned a blind eye to these silver snakes. "Qin Shaohong, if you want to make a move, then hurry up. If you don't make a move, you won't have the chance to make a move when I make a move again." Qin Wushuang's voice sounded leisurely. This voice was like a sharp sword, piercing a large hole in Qin Shaohong's aura that was originally accumulating power and waiting to be unleashed. He can actually see through my magical ability? Qin Shaohong's unparalleled confidence was shaken for the first time. A slight crack appeared. When he was preparing this attack, Qin Shaohong had not considered failure at all. He felt that once this trump card of his was activated, Qin Wushuang would not be able to get away by a fluke. However, everything was his wishful thinking. From beginning to end, Qin Wushuang did not fall for his bluff at all. The arrow on the bowstring had to be released. Qin Shaohong gritted his teeth. His dantian was activated. Saber light flashed. The silver light condensed into a dignified silver brilliance and struck out with a loud bang. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 640. Since Qin Wushuang was able to lock onto Qin Shaohong's position through the observant finger jade plate, he would not be unfamiliar with Qin Shaohong's every move. At the same moment Qin Wushuang launched his attack, Qin Wushuang's wings drew a perfect arc in the air, leaving behind afterimages as he landed on Qin Shaohong's weak side. The Overlord breaking formation spear casually thrust out. Thump! This spear thrust accurately pierced Qin Shaohong's weak spot. Although Qin Shaohong had merged into the void and concealed his figure, he could not turn his body into nothingness after all. This spear thrust was solid. If he was hit by the spear light, he would definitely lose his ability to fight on the spot. Although he did not understand what was going on, Qin Shaohong still had no choice but to dodge and glide backwards. Qin Wushuang seemed to be deliberately teasing Qin Shaohong. He did not give chase, but instead flew calmly in the air with his spear in hand. He looked in Qin Shaohong's direction and smiled faintly. The corners of his mouth more or less contained a hint of ridicule. At this moment, Qin Wushuang already had a card up his sleeve. He had to admit that Qin Wushuang was very strong. If Qin Wushuang had not gone through the baptism of the divine light, he would definitely not be able to defeat Qin Shaohong with his strength of the profound void martial stage. However, after Qin Wushuang had so many miraculous encounters, coupled with the purple cloud, yin-yang wings, and the self-created spear art that he had already practiced, it was enough to tie with Qin Shaohong. Coupled with the treasures in Qin Wushuang's hands, which were just enough to be of great use in the battle, the scales of victory had unknowingly tilted towards his side. Most importantly, Qin Wushuang had not experienced so many life and death battles like Qin Wushuang. His ability to deal with big situations and his mental state were far inferior to Qin Wushuang's. In this kind of anxious and bitter battle, once a crack appeared in one's mental state, it would be a very serious blow to one's morale, especially when Qin Shaohong's mental state was greatly affected and his mental state was unbalanced. The problem was even more serious. At this moment, Qin Shaohong could no longer be described with the word shocked. He really couldn't figure it out. If Qin Wushuang could see through the bluff of those qi explosions, then so be it. But in the battle just now, Qin Wushuang seemed to even know his specific position like the back of his hand. Could it be that this Qin Wushuang grew a pair of divine eyes that could see through the void? Qin Shaohong did not believe this, but with the facts before him, he had no choice but to believe it. If this Qin Wushuang could truly see through the void, then he would definitely be able to see through it. Then, his trump card would be completely useless. When Qin Shaohong thought of this, a strong sense of unwillingness arose in his heart. How could this be? How could this Qin Wushuang see through the void? He absolutely did not believe it. Sweeping away his previous doubts, he decided to give it another try. No matter what, he could not let Qin Wushuang plot against him. When Qin Shaohong thought of this, his confidence grew again. The silver light became even more intense. In the void, the silver light was like a sea spreading out to a wider area. Qin Shaohong's body was like a stone that was thrown into the sea. Qin Wushuang laughed loudly. Qin Shaohong, are you using the same old trick again? Or are you at your wit's end? If I use the same method to defeat you, I will definitely feel embarrassed. How about this? I will play with you empty-handed. As he said this, Qin Wushuang actually really put the Overlord breaking formation spear on his shoulder. He directly put away the spear and flapped his wings. His body flew at high speed in the air, sometimes left, sometimes right, sometimes up, and sometimes down. He flew faster and faster. Suddenly, Qin Wushuang raised his right arm and pointed his finger. Quick! His index finger and middle finger jabbed repeatedly, and the sword chi of the coagulated sword shot out like bullets. The coagulated sword of the coagulated sword could also be upgraded. Qin Wushuang's first few sword moves were just ordinary gang swords. But as the gang sword shot out, they were unknowingly upgraded to sword souls. Sword souls were naturally a level higher than gang swords. Gang swords were just sword energy that had a physical form, but no spirituality. Sword souls, on the other hand, were formed by merging Qin Wushuang's mind and thoughts. They had a certain spirituality and were more aggressive and flexible. Once the sword souls were formed, they were like jumping fairies, circling in the air and attacking. They were not like gang swords that attacked in a straight line. Once the sword souls were formed, they were no longer crisscrossing horizontal and vertical attacks. Instead, they were attacking from all directions. This kind of attack was simply unavoidable. At this moment, Qin Shaohong felt like vomiting blood. The attack that he had been preparing for a long time was actually so weak in front of his opponent. It was so pitiful that it did not even have the qualifications to be unable to withstand a single blow, because he did not even have the chance to use his attack. Before his aura could form, his opponent had already broken through his aura. Qin Shaohong was angry and anxious. He could only choose to be defensive again. For the first time, Qin Wushuang allowed Qin Shaohong to successfully use his attack. If he allowed him to successfully use it a second time, wouldn't he appear to be useless? Therefore, this second time, Qin Wushuang did not plan on letting Qin Shaohong use the same old trick at all. Instead, he directly cut off his aura from the middle, striking after the enemy. Under the attack of Qin Wushuang's heavenly vein condensed sword, Qin Shaohong was already in dire straits. He could only defend himself. How could he still have the strength to exchange attacks with Qin Wushuang? Qin Wushuang was in high spirits. His left hand also joined in the battle. Both hands held together, attacking from the left and right. The sword intent of the two hands was completely different. One was simple and honest, while the other was majestic and majestic. Two completely different sword intents were like ice and fire, making Qin Shaohong simply want to cry, but have no tears. This kind of divine ability of Qin Wushuang had already exceeded his expectations. It even exceeded the scope of his imagination. Seeing Qin Wushuang's 10 fingers flying, it was simply as if he was performing a masterpiece of art. Not to mention Qin Shaohong, even all the people watching the battle also held their breaths, being intimidated by Qin Wushuang's outrageous attacking method. Qin Yunran rubbed his nose and said with a bitter smile, "OL third, what kind of attack is this? Could it be that this boy refined out a second primordial spirit? How can he display different sword intents left and right?" Qin Chongyang sighed and said, "Qin Wushuang also didn't enter the deity realm. How can he refine out a second primordial spirit?" The saying of a second primordial spirit, the prerequisite must be entering the deity realm and tempering the divine soul, refining the divine soul into an independent life form. Only this way could it exist independently from the physical body. Deity realm powerhouses refining the divine soul. This was public opinion. But the divine ability of a second primordial spirit, the majority of deity realm powerhouses could not possibly cultivate it either. Because the majority of deity realm powerhouses did not even temper their own divine souls enough, let alone talk about tempering a second primordial spirit. Therefore, Qin Yunran's words actually had the intention of joking too. He was also deeply aware that it was impossible for this Qin Wushuang to refine a second primordial spirit, did not even possess a divine soul. How could there be a second primordial spirit? Qin Shaohong was battered and exhausted. No matter how tightly the cold moon water shattering saber danced in his hand, he was still unable to block the attacks from all angles. He was like a thatched hut with wind leaking everywhere at this moment. In the midst of a violent storm, there were places leaking water everywhere, completely unable to block it. Qin Wushuang knew that this Qin Shaohong could not hold on for much longer. If this battle was at the ascending dragon slope and happened yesterday, Qin Wushuang might not show mercy and directly throw Qin Shaohong off the stage. But last night's conversation with the third sect master let him understand a bit of logic that he did not comprehend in the past. Right at the critical juncture where Qin Shaohong was in imminent danger, Qin Wushuang's footsteps suddenly slowed down. The attacks in his hands also slowed down accordingly. His wings moved along with the wind, his aura suddenly withdrew, and his figure stood still. Like an abyss, like a lofty mountain, Qin Wushuang stood there floating, looking at Qin Shaohong with a slight smile. He actually stopped attacking. Instantly, this action caused a wave of discussion beneath the stage. Clearly, everyone could not understand why this Qin Wushuang had stopped all of a sudden. Could it be that he was lacking in strength? Impossible. Judging from his feeling of being bathed in the spring breeze, clearly he still had strength left and was handling the butcher's cleaver with ease. Could it be? Those with a nimble mind already remembered Qin Wushuang's previous words. Today's battle was a battle between disciples of the Qin clan. It seemed that in the end, this Qin Wushuang had held back a trick or two. Thinking here, a portion of people who were criticizing Qin Wushuang could not refrain from feeling somewhat impressed. At this moment, it was truly rare for him to rein in the horse at the edge of the precipice and show mercy. For your information, as long as he put in a little more effort, he could completely carry the halo of defeating Qin Shaohong and become the influential figure among the young generation of core disciples at the ascending dragon slope. Qin Shaohong breathed rapidly, and a complicated expression flashed across his eyes. Clearly, he had not admitted defeat completely. He was still hesitating and brewing his final counterattack. Qin Wushuang fixed his gaze at Qin Shaohong. He was also waiting for Qin Wushuang's final reaction. If this Qin Wushuang was still stubborn, he would not mind to completely defeat him. Now, this meager face was not for Qin Shaohong, nor for that honored warrior Ji Huai, but for the third chief and all people of the aspiring Throne Mountain Qin clan. Honored warrior Ji Huai was used to seeing grand scenes. He knew that up to this point. In fact, Qin Shaohong did not have much room to maneuver. With a long sigh, his entire person seemed to have aged 100 years. Shaohong, come down. You can't win this battle. As soon as honored warrior Ji Huai spoke, instantly Qin Shaohong's complexion changed drastically. A form of unprecedented bleakness emerged on his face. Those honored warriors next to Ji Huai were also slightly surprised. The personality of this Ji Huai had always been one that refused to admit defeat. How come this time his personality had changed? Dumbstruck, Qin Shaohong glared at Qin Wushuang. His lips trembled as he muttered something. His expression was lifeless, and he no longer had that domineering bearing he had before the battle. Honored warrior Ji Huai rolled in the air, and his body transformed into a meteoric light to drag Qin Shaohong down. He pushed him to the disciple next to him and shouted, "Take him down." The older the ginger, the spicier it was. If he let Qin Shaohong stay here now, he would only make a fool of himself. The blow to his temperament would certainly be immeasurable. In fact, sending him away was also a form of protection. Honored warrior Ji Huai took a deep breath and fixed his gaze at Qin Wushuang on the stage. He said with a somewhat lost tone, "Qin Wushuang, you won. In the past, your ancestor Qin, you had won against me. Now, you still won against my disciple? Is this what they call fate?" When he said here, Ji Huai's tone was filled with bitterness. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please log on to www.chidian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 641. When honored warrior Ji Huai took the initiative to ask Qin Shaohong to admit defeat, it had already made people feel extremely strange. His following words had made everyone feel even more astonished. Since when had this honored warrior Ji Huai become this calm? He had admitted that he was not as good as Qin Yu. This was something he was not willing to admit in these few hundred years. Qin Yunran laughed and stood up. "Ji Huai, This is the first time I have admired you. Haha, nice, nice. Break the golden rope, break the jade lock, disturb the heart devil, and break it in one day. Ji Huai, the day you completely break the heart devil will be the day you enter the supreme Dao stage. Can you still not comprehend it yourself? Qin Yunran's words were like a stick to the head that smashed directly on honored warrior Ji Huai's chest. Ji Huai's expression kept changing as he reacted rapidly. He also kept mumbling on the corner of his mouth as he revealed a thoughtful expression. After a while, he gave a long sigh and bowed towards the direction of Qin Yunran and Qin Chongyang. Straightening his body, he transformed into a wave of meteoric light and left. Suddenly, this meteoric light stopped and turned around. Honored warrior Ji Huai looked at Qin Wushuang with bitterness. Qin Wushuang, the disciples of your Eastwood Qin clan have never entered the aspiring throne mountain for generations. I sent people to settle all of them at the branch of the Scour Luo Qin clan. After honored warrior Ji Huai had finished speaking, he gave a long sigh. Ignoring everyone's strange gaze, he floated away. Qin Wushuang felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Now he understood why the people of the ancestors of the Eastwood Qin clan had never appeared at this aspiring throne mountain. The Plainfield Qin clan had also never made contact with these people. It turned out that honored warrior Ji Huai had done something. This way, honored warrior Ji Huai had always known that the Eastwood Qin clan was ancestor Qin Yu's place of residence. Or could it be that he had only guessed it out of thin air? For all of this, it was no longer important to have an answer. Qin Wushuang did not want to pursue this matter. He was already grateful that Ji Huai had told him this frankly. Hearing Ji Huai's tone, certainly it would be impossible for him to harm him. After all, being a person of the Qin clan, Ji Huai would not be so cruel to the extent of slaughtering his own people. Qin Wushuang silently walked down from the stage, but he did not have much of the joy of a victor. He was deep in thought. Qin Chongyang leaped onto the stage. Everyone, did you understand the 16 words that the second chief said just now? Break the golden rope, break the jade lock, disturb the heart demon, and break it in one day. Each of you should reflect on yourself. Do you also have an inner demon in your heart? Is there also a golden rope and jade lock that binds you? Qin Chongyang's voice was extremely penetrating, interrogating everyone's nerves. These core disciples were all intelligent people. After being reminded by Qin Chongyang, they also started to think seriously. It was obvious that the third sect master was referring to something. Ascending Dragon Slope. What is the Ascending Dragon Slope? Is this the place where dragons soared? The place where you legends set sail? If you spend all your time on forming cliques and fighting among yourselves, then what Qin Wushuang said is exactly what I want to say. In the future, it will be your generation that will destroy the foundation of the Qin clan. Initially, although honored warrior Ji Huai and Qin Yu's generation competed fiercely, it was only a battle of personal feelings. Up to this point, you have already turned this competition into a deformed situation. Each of you are bound by the golden rope and jade lock. If you do not break this heart demon, your future will be bleak. Each of Qin Chongyang's words were like pearls that knocked on the hearts of these core disciples. Astonishment flashed from Qin Wushuang's eyes. He looked at Qin Chongyang and was also full of admiration. This third chief had knocked on them at the most appropriate time. It was like a timely rain that cooled down the frenzied atmosphere of internal strife at the ascending dragon slope. If they were to allow this mentality to spread, it would be extremely dangerous. Although the situation at the ascending dragon slope could not be broken in a day or two, it would require time, subtle influence, and slow change. However, without a doubt, this was a good start. Qin Chongyang flicked his sleeve confidently and at ease. You are all elite disciples of the Qin clan. You are extremely intelligent. I don't need to say more. Whether you can comprehend it on your own, it will depend on your temperament. If you want to become a great talent, you must comprehend it on your own. Or else, it will be a small matter if you hinder your own future. If you hinder the Qin clan's plan, you will be a sinner for all eternity. After he had finished speaking, Qin Chongyang floated down and returned to his seat. Now, Elder Guan Qi stepped out and announced, "For the first battle, challenger Qin Wushuang has won. Qin Dongsheng, who initially challenged Qin Xiaoyang, will challenge Qin Wushuang instead. The winner of the two of you will enter the final list of 5. Initially, Qin Dongsheng hoped to try his luck. When he drew Qin Xiaohong, his heart was already half cold. The development of the matter was even more out of his expectation. Qin Wushuang had beaten Qin Xiaohong to the point that he could not resist. This made Qin Dongsheng give up completely. He walked out and said with a bitter smile, "Elder Guan Qi, I am not skilled enough. After witnessing the divine skills of the two senior brothers, I feel deeply that I am not strong enough. For this challenge, I give up." Senior brother Wushuang deserves to advance. I only admire him. I am not jealous or dissatisfied. Qin Dongxing's words came from the bottom of his heart. He bowed toward Qin Wushuang and then retreated calmly. He did not feel any psychological pressure when he admitted defeat. With Qin Wushuang's strength, most likely besides senior brother Qin Taichung, no one could win against him. With such strength, what qualifications did Qin Dongsheng have to challenge him? Go up and get beaten up? It would appear that he was not tactful and not smart. It would be better to be straightforward and admit defeat directly. After all, it was not shameful to admit defeat in front of Qin Wushuang. Qin Dongxing's action won the cheers of the entire hall. This way, Qin Wushuang had entered the list of 5 directly. When the final list of 5 was decided, he would compete for the final 4 spots. Together with Qin Taichung, he would form the final 5 spots. The remaining 8 challengers began to step onto the stage one after another. However, their luck and strength were not as convincing as Qin Wushuang's. Although a few of them had displayed powerful potential and strength, the difference in stage still made them fall short at the most crucial moment. Besides Qin Shi, who almost failed miserably at an easy task, Qin Hongyan, Qin Jining, and Qin Hao had entered the list of 5 without much suspense. In other words, besides Qin Wushuang, the other challengers had all ended in defeat. Only, there was a difference in the way they lost, whether it was honorable or not. At this moment, Qin Hongyan, Qin Hao, and Qin Shi finally knew how lucky they were. Fortunately, Qin Xiaohong was the one who had offended Qin Wushuang the most. They were only there to cheer for Qin Xiaohong. If Qin Xiaohong was switched with them, at this moment, it would not be Qin Xiaohong who had lost miserably, but one of them. When they thought here, naturally they felt lucky inwardly. When the list of 5 was out, it would be the final selection. Choosing 4 spots among the 5 meant that one of them would be eliminated. Relatively speaking, the elimination rate was not high. For example, Qin Wushuang and Qin Jining, they were not worried at all. No matter how the selection was done, they would not worry about a spot in the end. Qin Hao, Qin Shi, and Qin Hongyan had similar strength and were slightly inferior to Qin Wushuang and the others. Naturally, the person who would be eliminated would be chosen from among them. The final selection used the formation breaking method. A formation of the same level was arranged in advance, and the 5 people were allowed to enter the formation respectively. Then, it was calculated according to the time they took to break the formation. The person who took the slowest time and left the formation the latest would be considered defeated. This method was the most indisputable. What was tested was real talent and could not be faked. In this way, the subtle difference in strength was shown. In the end, Qin Shi was eliminated with a slight difference compared to Qin Hao. It helped the other 4 people. Although Qin Shi was depressed, he had nothing to say. No one could take the back door in this kind of selection method. If he wanted to blame someone, he could only blame himself for not being skilled enough. After the 4 spots were out, this internal selection competition was considered a success. Besides Qin Wushuang, the dark horse, the others were within everyone's expectations. Therefore, after the event, the focus of everyone's discussion was naturally focused on Qin Wushuang's monstrous performance. Qin Wushuang had entered the mountain with a low profile. Previously, everyone had only heard about the reputation of this Qin Wushuang, yet they had never seen his real skills. In today's battle, Qin Wushuang had displayed his invincible power and allowed everyone to witness the real strength of this genius. Indeed, he deserved his reputation. After the meeting was over, Qin Taichung walked over with a smile. Junior brother Wu Shuang, good job. Let's go and drink at the second chief's place. It was apparent that this Qin Taichung often went to the second chief's place to drink. Inside the cave dwelling of the second chief, the two chiefs and the two most exceptional core disciples sat on the ground. Taichung, now you don't feel lonely, right? Ha ha. Qin Yunran laughed and pointed at Qin Wushuang. Your junior brother Wushuang is chasing after you with all his might. You must also put in some effort. Let's see which of you two will enter the supreme Dao stage first. Qin Taichung laughed. Junior brother Wushuang is a genius. Even if you enter the supreme Dao stage earlier than me, I will not be an exception. Ha ha, junior brother Wushuang. I am ashamed to say that although I knew about those rules at the ascending dragon slope, I never thought deeply about it. Through your analysis, I finally realized the severity of the problem. If I knew this, I should not have tolerated them. Qin Taichung had a straightforward and easygoing personality. He was extremely accommodating to his junior brothers and would not argue with them. His straightforward personality did not allow him to think deeply about it. Qin Wushuang immediately said, Senior brother Taichung has a noble character and unquestionable integrity. I have always admired you. Qin Yunran laughed. When I saw you two, I felt that the rise of the aspiring throne Mountain Qin clan would not be a fool's dream. Third, perhaps we will not make it to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain pageant in 17 years. However, next time, after 517 years, I definitely have reason to believe that the Qin clan will seize the Heavenly Emperor's seat again. When Qin Chongyang heard the words of Qin Yunran, he also opened his tiger-like eyes wide and revealed a determined expression. Clearly, he was also filled with complicated feelings towards the Heavenly Emperor's seat. His ardent expectation was overflowing with words and expression. The rise of the Qin clan would certainly aim to seize the Heavenly Emperor's seat again. Only by seizing the Heavenly Emperor's seat could it be counted as a true rise. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 642. The illusion Heavenly Lake was located to the west of the Tian Xian land. It was also a long journey from the Xian Yuan Mount. Qin Wushuang estimated that it would take a few years or even longer to get to the illusion Heavenly Lake. Therefore, Qin Wushuang must make many preparations. First, he notified Black Panther and Ying Long at the Judge Mountain Prefecture and the Orderly Mountain Prefecture. These two were the eyes he had set up at these two places. If the sects of the Xian Yuan Mound made any movements and planned to invade the human countries, they would receive the news through the local intelligence department. When Qin Wushuang arranged these eyes there, they could inform the sects and powerhouses of the human countries to retreat and hide at the endless Eastern Sea. The Heavenly Emperor 8 gates were all invited by the Karakoram Immortal Clan. Each gate received the same treatment. 6 spots, no more, no less. Even the current Heavenly Emperor Xian clan was not an exception. As for the Heavenly Punishing Villa and the Sound of Thunder sect, they were in the middle among the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates. They were neither superior nor at the bottom. Since this operation involved the Totem clan, the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates had specially gathered everyone at the Heavenly Emperor gate before their departure. For the Heavenly Emperor Xian clan, although the Heavenly Emperor also wanted to attend the pageant, from an overall perspective, it was inconvenient for him to move around. Therefore, the Heavenly Emperor could not move and must stay at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain to oversee the general situation. The number 2 figure of the Xian clan was the younger brother of the Heavenly Emperor, Xian Tianxin. He was the leader of the Heavenly Emperor Gate. As for the 5 young disciples, of course Xian Wuji, the son of the Heavenly Emperor, was the leader. Clearly, Qin Wushuang valued the Heavenly Emperor Gate more than the Sound of Thunder sect and the Heavenly Punishing Villa. Qin Wushuang was a smart person. After entering the Heavenly Emperor Mountain for more than a year, he already had a thorough understanding of the situation. He knew that on the surface, the Qin clan was fighting to the death with the sound of Thunder Sect and the heavenly punishing villa. However, the combination of those two powerhouses did not have the power to destroy the Qin clan. Since they did not have the power, why did these two powerhouses dare to fight against the Qin clan publicly? Without a doubt, someone must be supporting these two powerhouses from behind the scenes. Although no one had exposed the truth behind the matter, of course, everyone was well aware of the history of the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates. The supporter behind this was most likely the current Heavenly Emperor Gate, the Xian clan. Heavenly Emperor Xian Tianwen still sat on his Heavenly Emperor's seat. High and lofty, he swept across the entire scene with a disdainful attitude. He laughed. "Very good. I can see that each of your sects have sent out all their elites. I am very gratified that you all value this event so highly." Everyone knew that the Celestial of the Arch had more to say, so they weren't in a hurry to express their opinions. Sure enough, His Majesty the Sky Emperor paused for a moment and said, "The journey is long and the matter is of great importance. I must give you a set of rules." 3 rules? Everyone's hearts were clear, knowing that His Majesty, the Heavenly Emperor, wanted to prevent any accidents from happening. First, regardless of the grudges you have at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, when you leave the Heavenly Emperor Mountain and arrive at the Karakoram Immortal Clan, you must put down those grudges for me. Along the way, you are not allowed to get involved in any personal grudges, nor are you allowed to seek revenge or attack one another. The intention of this rule was clear and the meaning was clear. They were not allowed to engage in internal strife, even if they could not live under the same sky as the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Second, each sect can only send 6 people. You're not allowed to bring your family, friends, or contracted spiritual beasts. Of course, sealed spiritual beasts are not included. Qin Wushuang was moved inwardly. With this restriction from the Heavenly Emperor, it would be impossible for Bao Bao, Lone, and the others to travel together. Su'er would also not be able to accompany them. Currently, this Heavenly Emperor was the leader of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. As soon as he spoke, although Qin Wushuang was annoyed, he could not do anything. He could only feel bad luck. Third, all sects will depart together. You are not allowed to act on your own. After you participate in the pageant, you can leave separately without any restrictions. Without a doubt, this third rule conveyed one meaning. They must ensure their absolute safety before participating in the 10,000-year pilgrimage pageant. As for the aftermath, it would not matter. When Qin Wushuang heard this rule and looked at the expressionless face of the Heavenly Emperor, for some unknown reason, he felt somewhat strange inwardly. After the Heavenly Emperor agreed on these 3 rules, he glanced across the entire scene with a smile and said lightly, "For these 3 rules, no one has any objections, right?" Since he had already spoken up to this point, no one could open their mouth even if they wanted to have objections. Qin Wushuang laughed inwardly. Suddenly, he felt a gaze lingering on him. Following this gaze, he saw that it came from the Yun clan. A moment ago, Qin Wushuang had been paying attention to the Heavenly Emperor clan. When he saw the person from the Yun clan gazing at him, Qin Wushuang could not help but feel surprised. This person who was gazing at him carried a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. It was Yun Xuechen. Only, Yun Xuechen's current appearance was different than the previous time. He appeared more formal and dignified. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang was astonished, yet he did not show it on the surface. It was because he saw that from Senior Yun Xuechen's eyes, it clearly carried a form of hinting for him to not speak out. Qin Wushuang was not an idiot. He knew that under such circumstances, it would definitely raise suspicions if he were to meet with Senior Yun Xuechen. With the sensitivity of the Heavenly Emperor Gate, most likely they would mistakenly think that the Yun clan and the Qin clan had some secret agreement and would harm the Heavenly Emperor Gate. Clearly, Yin Guinan of the Heavenly Punishing Villa intended to flatter him as he laughed. "Your Majesty, the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates will only obey your orders. Of course, we will not have any objections. Besides, your Majesty's agreement is for everyone's good. The Heavenly Emperor laughed. Although I hold the position of Heavenly Emperor, I rule the martial arts world and the secular world. In the end, I still serve the Xian Yuan Totem Clan. This is also the intention of the Xian Yuan Totem Clan. After all, the Karakoram Immortal Clan is a totem clan. We cannot lose the face of the Xian Yuan clan. When he mentioned the totem clan, naturally everyone had nothing to say. People of the Xian Yuan Totem Clan are already on their way. The Heavenly Emperor 8 gates will depart in 3 days. There must not be any delay. To the Qin clan, these 3 rules appear to be beneficial without any disadvantages. At least, the Qin clan would not need to worry about the heavenly punishing villa and the Sound of Thunder sect playing tricks. However, on the other hand, the more the Heavenly Emperor acted this way, the more the people of the Qin clan felt it was inappropriate. Considering that the 3rd rule did not restrict the return journey, it also meant that after participating in the 10,000-year pilgrimage pageant, they could resolve any grudges on the way back. Upon careful analysis, in fact, it was to encourage personal fights. With the 2nd rule, although Murong Su could not go, Bao Bao and Lone, the spiritual beasts that were his personal companions, could not accompany him. Qin Wushuang came to the guest house and found Bao Bao and Murong Su. He explained the situation to them. When Murong Su heard this, she felt slightly disappointed inwardly. However, in the end, she understood the general situation as she comforted Qin Wushuang. Brother Qin, don't worry, I will not mind. Don't worry and go to the Illusion Heavenly Lake. I will wait for you at the guest house. Bao Bao was somewhat depressed. Boss, we can't go? It's so depressing. Qin Wushuang laughed. It's good that we can't go. You and Lone will train at the guest house and take care of Su'er. Upon hearing the words of Qin Wushuang, Bao Bao's worry turned into joy as he laughed. Boss, don't worry. We will protect senior sister Murong. However, Little Bamboo chuckled. Little monkey, don't ask my missy to protect you at that time. Bao said proudly. Who said that? I'm already at the profound void martial stage. I must strive to enter the perfect void martial stage before boss returns. Ha ha ha. Qin Wushuang gave a long sigh. Bao Bao, don't advance prematurely due to greed. For training, take it one step at a time. Anyways, you have the bloodline of the ancient spiritual monkey. Don't be too hasty. When the conditions are right, success will follow naturally. Bao Bao said with a confident tone, Boss, don't worry. However, you must remember to come back early. Don't let our senior sister Murong wait for too long. Murong Su gave a light laugh and did not reprimand him. On the contrary, Little Bamboo rolled her eyes at Bao Bao and walked over. She grabbed Bao Bao's ear and said, You two, come with me. What are you doing, senior sister Little Bamboo? A gentleman should use his hands and not his mouth. Bao Bao cried out in pain and obediently followed Little Bamboo outside. Suddenly, Lone felt that he was redundant standing here alone. He looked at Qin Wushuang and Murong Su, then looked at Little Bamboo, who turned around to give him a look. Suddenly, he realized the light and laughed foolishly. I will also go out for a while. Instantly, only Murong Su and Qin Wushuang remained in the room. Qin Wushuang took a step forward lightly and held Murong Su's soft and tender hands. Su'er, you won't blame me, right? Brother Qin, why would I blame you? Murong Su blinked her eyes and her beautiful eyelashes fluttered. I could have chosen not to go. Murong Su extended her hand and placed 2 fingers next to Qin Wushuang's lips. She shook her head. Brother Qin, you're not allowed to speak like this. A good man should aspire to travel far. How could Su'er restrict you from traveling? Qin Wushuang was greatly moved. He smiled knowingly and nodded. Su'er, I once heard a sentence. If 2 people love each other for a long time, why would they stay together day and night? Isn't this the truth? This was a sentence that Qin Wushuang came up with on the spot. However, it made Murong Su's eyes flash with surprise. She kept repeating these 2 sentences and was greatly enchanted. Brother Qin, who said this? It's so well said. Qin Wushuang was startled. Only now did he remember that this was a sentence from Immortals of the Magpie Bridge by the Song Dynasty poet in his previous life. It was a classic that had been passed down through the ages. He stared blankly for a moment. Then a strange smile appeared in the corner of his mouth. That person's surname is also Qin. We are from the same sect, haha. Is he an ancestor of your Qin family? Morong Su took it seriously. Qin Wushuang had only told a white lie, but he didn't expect Murong Su to react like this. He could only smile bitterly. He can't be considered an ancestor, but his poem was very good. These two sentences were only the finishing touch. Murong Su was greatly curious and hurriedly asked about the structure of the entire poem. Qin Wushuang could only recite the original words. Fortunately, Qin Wushuang was a graduate student in his previous life. He wasn't ignorant and incompetent, so he recited it with great eloquence. Murong Su's heart shook when she heard golden wind and jade do meet, surpassing countless people in the human world. For a moment, she was stupefied. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 643. After 3 days, the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates had gathered and departed on time. Within the radius of 2 or 3 million miles around the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, besides the Heavenly Emperor Gate, the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates shared the same position. However, they did not interact much with each other. After all, when one reached their position, they were more on guard against each other than interacting with each other. Besides the undisguised alliance between the Heavenly Punishing Villa and the Sound of Thunder sect, the other sects did not interact with each other. At least on the surface, one could not see such a trend. The leader of the Qin clan was Qin Yunran. It seemed that everyone had a mutual understanding. Almost the leader of each sect was the second in command of their respective sect. Of course, this was expected. Under normal circumstances, the number one elite warrior of each sect would oversee the mountain gate. It was rare for them to go out. Qin Wushuang followed the team of the Qin clan. Along the way, he did not deliberately show off. Clearly, Qin Taichung took great care of Qin Wushuang. To this junior brother who had emerged at a rapid speed, not only did he not push him aside, he took great care of him and displayed his broad breadth of mind. Qin Taichung set himself as an example and gradually eased the relationship between these 5 disciples of the Qin clan. Qin Hao and Qin Hongyan, who were initially incompatible with Qin Wushuang, also gradually became familiar with Qin Wushuang. In the end, they discovered with astonishment that this junior brother Qin Wushuang was easy to get along with. It was completely different than what they had imagined. Initially, Qin Jining did not participate in Qin Xiaohong's operation. Being a clean and honest person, he admired Qin Taichung the most. Now, when he saw that Qin Wushuang also possessed exceptional strength, he was not jealous. On the contrary, he felt some admiration. Not only did he admire Qin Wushuang's strength, he also admired Qin Wushuang's foresight. At least, his understanding of the situation at the Ascending Dragon Slope was something even senior brother Qin Taichung did not expect. Naturally, Qin Jining did not think deeply about these problems. After being pointed out by Qin Wushuang, he thought about it carefully and found it to be true. Although there was a fixed route from Xian Yuan Mound to the Illusion Heavenly Lake, it was still a long journey. After about half a month, they arrived at the border of Xian Yuan Mound and the Illusion Heavenly Lake. Currently, they were already 2 or 3 million miles away from that Heavenly Emperor Mountain. That night, they settled down at the border of the illusory Moon Manor. Of course, the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates also had a mutual understanding. They did not plan to make a big show of force and cause the local martial arts sects to make a big fuss to flatter them. That would be more troublesome. Among the 72 prefectures of a Xian Yuan Mound, the Mirage Moon Prefecture did not have the largest area. However, its long and narrow terrain was unique. After settling down, Qin Yunran summoned the 5 disciples to his room. Apparently, he had something to tell them. After the 5 disciples sat down, Qin Yunran said, Taichung, what do you think? Qin Taichung smiled and said, "To be honest, I'm really looking forward to it. This is Disciples' first time going to the Illusion Heavenly Lake. What about you guys?" Everyone's thoughts were more or less the same, and they all expressed the same meaning. The Illusion Heavenly Lake is perhaps the most peaceful place among the 5 great forbidden spiritual zones. The sects within the Illusion Heavenly Lake rarely fought each other like in other forbidden spiritual zones. However, this does not mean that the Illusion Heavenly Lake is a place where you can come and go as you please. Qin Yunran said with an incredibly serious tone. In fact, this Illusion Heavenly Lake is extremely xenophobic, especially to the Xian Yuan Mound and the extreme North Snow Zone. Qin Wushuang found it somewhat strange. He remembered that the Illusion Heavenly Lake, the Xian Yuan Mound, and the extreme North Snow Zone were all forbidden spiritual zones ruled by human martial artists. They interacted with each other more often. The Heavenly Fire's southern border was half human and half beast. The Beast Clan ruled the endless Eastern Sea. This was the overall structure of the 5 great forbidden spiritual zones. Qin Wushuang had heard these 2 chiefs mention it not long ago. Why did the second chief speak of it this way? You must find it strange. The Illusion Heavenly Lake is also a place ruled by human martial artists. Why is it at odds with the Xian Yuan Mound and the extreme North Snow Zone? Isn't that right? Qin Yunran asked with a smile. Qin Wushuang said, "Second chief, could it be there is some classical story behind this?" Qin Yunran gave a long sigh. In fact, there is no classical story. To put it bluntly, it's gratitude and grudges. The Illusion Heavenly Lake is the only forbidden spiritual zone ruled by females among the 5 great forbidden spiritual zones. In those sects at the Illusion Heavenly Lake, almost all of them are ruled by females. Even at the Karakoram Immortal Clan, more than half of the martial artists are female martial artists. Second Chief, why is it like this? Could it be that the boundary of the Illusion Heavenly Lake is more beneficial for female martial artists? That's why it led to the situation where females flourish and males decline? Qin Hao could not help but ask. In normal times, they would train at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain of the Xian Yuan Mound and rarely learned about the classical stories of the other forbidden spiritual zones. Now, upon hearing the words of the second chief, everyone was overflowing with interest. In fact, it's not much related to the boundary. Legend has it that in the ancient times, the Illusion Heavenly Lake was the birthplace of the Queen Mother of the West. Therefore, the tradition of female martial artists ruling over that place prevailed. It has been passed down until now, resulting in the current situation. Regarding these classical stories, very few disciples of the younger generation knew about them. When Qin Wushuang heard about the mythological era, he could not help but feel somewhat fascinated. He asked, "Second Chief, if that mythological era existed, then where is the Queen Mother of the West now? Didn't they say that theoretically, elite warriors of the Supreme Tao have an immortal body?" Qin Yunran laughed. "This is a good question. The mythological era, it's a mystery. To the Tianxian land, it's definitely an unsolvable mystery. Legend has it that the current totem clan are all descendants of the divine clan from the mythological era. During the mythological era, the gods rose together. They fought for supremacy in the world. It was always hailed as the golden era of the Tianxian land. Only, that era is too far away. Now, we can only speculate from some traces left behind. There are no concrete ancient records. Perhaps there are, yet the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates and the other sects do not know about it. Could it be that the Totem clan has controlled these information? Didn't they say that the Qin clan is also a sect passed down from the ancient era? The ancient era is too long. It's a few 100,000 years, or even a few million years. The inheritance of the Qin clan is less than 100,000 years. It's still far away from the true mythological era. However, among the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates, only the Yun and Xian clan are on par with the Qin clan. I am afraid the other 5 sects do not even have 30,000 years of inheritance. When Qin Yunran talked about history, he was incredibly proud. Qin Taichung laughed straightforwardly. Usually, all the heavenly emperor seats are held by these three houses. Second chief, that totem clan is incredibly mysterious. Just how powerful are they? Everyone was extremely concerned about this question. The totem clan was incredibly mysterious, yet everyone did not know much about them. They wanted to use this opportunity to inquire about something. Unexpectedly, Qin Yunran was also a hoodlum as he laughed. Don't look at me. I am afraid only the head chief can answer this question. Only the Heavenly Emperor Gate is qualified to deal with the Xian Yuan clan. The Qin clan has left the Heavenly Emperor's seat for a long time. For a long time, the Xian clan has been the banker. When the Qin clan was in charge, me and the third chief were not even born. I am afraid the head chief was only a young disciple at that time. Qin Taichung laughed. The head chief is as mysterious as the Xian Yuan clan. Up to this point, I only know that there is a head chief. I have never seen him. It's normal. The head chief has been in solitary training for more than 200 years. Before his solitary training, he once said that the longest he could stay in solitary training is 500 years. If everything goes well, he will come out before the Heavenly Emperor Mountain Pageant in 17 years. If it does not go well, everyone should be prepared for a long wait. 500 years. As soon as he spoke these words, Qin Wushuang and the others looked at each other in dismay. Among them, the oldest Qin Taichung was only 100 years old. In other words, when the head chief was in solitary training, each of them were not even born. Qin Hao laughed. Second chief, in fact, we all want to know what is going on with the Supreme Dao stage. Supreme Dao stage, Qin Yunran said with a leisurely tone. To put it bluntly, it is to refine the body and form the divine soul. The corporeal body of a Supreme Dao elite warrior is the Supreme Dao golden body. Non-Supreme Dao weapons would not be able to harm them in the slightest. The most powerful part of a Supreme Dao elite warrior is not the corporeal body, but the divine soul. Powerful Supreme Dao elite warriors can even use the divine soul to kill people. With a thought, they can mobilize the natural elements to attack the enemy. So powerful? Qin Hao and the others could not help but be surprised. Do you want to try? Qin Yunran asked with a faint smile. Qin Hao scratched his head. Then forget it. Hee. Qin Wushuang asked, Second Chief, we are very clear about the stages below the Supreme Dao stage. But how are the Supreme Dao stage divided? I do not know. Please enlighten me, Chief. The others also did not know. Generally speaking, one must reach the peak of the common mysterious stage to slowly come into contact with the Supreme Dao stage. Before that, there was no need to understand. You all want to know? Qin Yunran glanced at everyone. Seeing that everyone nodded, Qin Yunran laughed. Then I will tell you all, but don't be delusional. You will not be able to sleep after hearing it. Now, your cultivation is still far away from the Supreme Dao stage. One step at a time. It is impossible to achieve the Supreme Dao stage if you are eager for quick success. Honored warrior Ji Huai has a high cultivation, right? Why can't he enter the Supreme Dao stage? It is because he thinks too much and his thoughts are too complicated. The Supreme Dao stage has very high requirements for the primordial spirit stage. If your thoughts are not pure and there's an inner demon in your heart, you will never be able to break through the Supreme Dao stage. Comprehending the Supreme Dao stage, on one hand, is fighting against the cultivation barrier. On the other hand, it is also fighting against one's inner demon. If you comprehend it, you comprehend it. If you don't comprehend it, you don't comprehend it. It cannot be faked. Qin Wushuang thoughtfully remembered these words in his heart. He knew that he certainly had enough potential to challenge the Supreme Dao stage. But the words of the second chief would undoubtedly allow him to take fewer detours. The Supreme Dao stage is also divided into 4 major stages: Spirit Concentration, Spirit Transformation, True God, and Sky God. Qin Yunran's tone was solemn for the first time. Most Supreme Dao stage cultivators are only at the Spirit Concentration stage. Including me, I am still one step away from the Spirit Transformation stage. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 644. With the distance of one calamity, Qin Wushuang and the others were somewhat confused. What was the meaning of this tribulation? Qin Yinran knew that these kids did not know much about the Supreme Tao stage. He laughed. You guys always feel that the Supreme Tao stage is immortality. Even if the body is destroyed, the divine soul can live forever. Am I right? Is that not the case? Qin Hao asked while stuttering. They longed for the Supreme Tao stage so much because they wanted to live forever. If the Supreme Tao stage could not allow one to live forever, why would everyone work so hard to cultivate the Supreme Tao? Haha, this is only the outside world's misunderstanding of the Supreme Tao stage. Theoretically, the true Supreme Tao stage is immortal as long as the divine soul is immortal. However, the Supreme Tao stage also has calamities and tribulations. The calamities that the Supreme Tao stage has to face are much more violent than ordinary martial artists. Have you heard of the 5 decay of the celestial being? This is the general idea. Each stage of the Supreme Tao stage has calamities and tribulations. Using the coagulate Supreme Tao stage as an example, there are 3 minor calamities, 3 intermediate calamities, and 3 major calamities. The first 6 calamities are still manageable. However, this major calamity is extremely difficult. If you don't look for it, it will come to you. Now, I am at the 8th coagulate Supreme Tao stage. Third Chief is at the 6th coagulate Supreme Tao stage. This explanation was extremely eye-catching. With one glance, Qin Wushuang and the others had a general understanding of the situation. The coagulate Supreme Tao stage is the initial gathering of the divine soul. It is not stable. Every tribulation would strengthen one's divine soul. Therefore, the power difference between each calamity also exists. If I pass the 9th calamity, which is the last calamity of the 3 major calamities, I will advance to the transformation Supreme Tao stage. The divine soul stage of the transformation Supreme Tao stage is extremely stable. Starting from the initial stage, I can use the divine soul to kill people. Therefore, the so-called killing with the divine soul, the Supreme Tao elite warriors at the coagulate Supreme Tao stage cannot do it, including me at the 8th coagulate Supreme Tao stage. The transformation Supreme Tao stage also has the same 9 calamities. There are also 3 stages, 3 minor calamities, 3 intermediate calamities, and 3 major calamities. After passing the 9 calamities of the transformation Supreme Tao stage, it will be the genuine Supreme Tao stage. Of course, the genuine Supreme Tao stage is a stage that even I cannot imagine. I am afraid it is the strongest existence in the Tianxian land. True Supreme Tao, the strongest? When everyone heard the sensitive word strongest, their hearts trembled. In the world of cultivators, the word strongest was very important. Yes, because above the genuine Supreme Tao is the heavenly Supreme Tao. At the heavenly Supreme Tao stage, you can break through the restraints of the Tianxian land, truly surpass all the rules of the land, and soar into the galaxy. Soaring to the heavenly river? Qin Wushuang couldn't help but look up at the vast night sky outside the window. The starry sky was so deep and mysterious. However, the heavenly Supreme Tao is above the rules of the Tianxian land. The starry sky is their limit. Wushuang, Taichung, listen well. In this universe, there were countless stars. In each star, there was only an ordinary plane. For example, our Tianxian land is only a speck in the vast starry sky, a speck of dust that adorns the elephant of the universe. Therefore, even if the genuine Supreme Tao stage was the peak existence of the Tianxian land, when placed in the grand view of the universe, what was the genuine Supreme Tao stage? Honestly, I can't explain it clearly. When Qin Yunran said this, he laughed as if he was trying to dispel the ridicule. Of course, don't think too much. With our wisdom, certainly it's ridiculous to estimate the vast universe. It's like the frog at the bottom of the well that doesn't know how vast the world is. I don't expect all of you to soar into the galaxy. I only hope that when pursuing the supreme Tao stage, you can have more wisdom and less inner demons. The Qin clan must take back the Heavenly Emperor's seat, or else the future of the Qin clan will be bleak. This was something substantial. Soaring to the Heavenly River was too far away from them. They had not even entered the Supreme Tao stage, not to mention thinking about the genuine Supreme Tao or the Heavenly Supreme Tao stage. According to this estimation, certainly there were levels above the Heavenly Supreme Tao stage. Only the division of the levels was not a concept that existed at the Tianxian land. It would be a waste of effort to think about it, for there would be no answer. Qin Yunran's words seemed to have opened a door for Qin Wushuang. Again, he had seen a world that had suddenly opened up. It had broadened Qin Wushuang's horizons. However, Qin Hao asked, Second Chief, what is the strength of the Heavenly Emperor of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain? This was also a question that everyone was concerned about. Usually when they saw the Heavenly Emperor standing high above, everyone felt reverence from the bottom of their hearts. The Heavenly Emperor? Qin Yunran laughed. The strength of the Heavenly Emperor is not something ordinary Coagulate Supreme, Tao, elite warriors could compare with. The Heavenly Emperor is at least at the 7th or 8th calamity of the Transformation Supreme Tao stage. Doesn't that mean it's highly possible for the Heavenly Emperor to advance to the genuine Supreme Tao stage? It's possible, but only possible. At the Transformation Supreme Tao stage, each calamity is incredibly difficult. To advance, it will be untold hardships. Whether or not he can break through, it will depend on his luck. However, if he truly breaks through and enters the genuine Supreme Tao stage, I am afraid it will be even more difficult to move the position of the Heavenly Emperor of the Exine clan. When Qin Yunran said this, he also felt somewhat rueful. However, in the end, he was an open-minded person. He blew his long beard and laughed. Everyone, don't belittle yourselves. The Qin clan is also a sect passed down from the ancient times. We also have great fortune. Although we are at the bottom for now, in the cycle of the natural law, there will always be a low point when it comes to prosperity and decline. After the low point, certainly we will rise again. If the Qin clan receives the care of the natural law, certainly a major figure will appear and great fortune will appear. Once it appears, what about it if it's the genuine Supreme Tao stage? Major figure, great fortune. These few words knocked heavily on the bottom of everyone's heart. Everyone was the proud son of the heavens of the Qin clan. Deep in their hearts, they all hoped to be that major figure, that person with great fortune and fortune. They hoped to be the destined son of heaven of the Qin clan, the exceptional genius that would lead the Qin clan to rebuild its glory. Qin Wushuang was no exception. However, Qin Wushuang did not reveal it. Although he had such thoughts inwardly, he had evidence to back it up. If I can grasp all of the 7 deadly arrays formation, that formation once said that the person who grasps the 7 deadly arrays formation will have the opportunity to ride above the peak of the Tianxian land. In other words, the height of the 7 deadly arrays formation is higher than the height of the Heavenly Emperor of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. It can be equal to the Totem clan, or even above them. After all, although the Totem clan is powerful, they are not powerful enough to ride above the rules of the Tianxian land. The totem powerhouses of the 5 forbidden spiritual zones still restrain each other. As Qin Wushuang thought this way inwardly, suddenly, a burst of intense motivation emerged from his heart. He had developed an unprecedented desire to dash towards the Supreme Tao stage. What was the meaning of riding above the rules? It meant to ignore all rules. When one looked up, they could ignore the existence of any other people, including the Totem clan. Or else, how could they be said to ride above the Tianxian land? Riding above the Tianxian land meant that they could soar to the Galaxia and explore higher planes. Thinking here, in fact, Qin Wushuang was incredibly curious. Just who was the original owner of the 7 deadly arrays formation? Could it be that the position of the original owner had surpassed the existence of the totem clan? Qin Wushuang's head was full of questions, yet he could not find an answer. However, he was not stubborn in thinking about it. After all, the formation was already under his control. Now, he was already at the profound void martial stage and was qualified to explore the fifth loop. He decided that after he returned from this trip to the Illusion Heavenly Lake, he would explore the fifth loop. The fifth loop was at the endless Eastern Sea. It was the most mysterious, complicated, and vast forbidden spiritual zone in the Tianxian land. Qin Wushuang had been longing for it for a long time. Suddenly, Qin Yunran laughed. After talking so much, we seem to have deviated from the topic. I seem to have asked you guys to come here to talk about the Illusion Heavenly Lake. Indeed, everyone asked one question after another. Indeed, they had turned the topic around. Qin Taichung laughed. Yes, Chief, we are going to the Illusion Heavenly Lake. What's going on with this Karakoram Immortal clan? Compared to the Xian Yuan clan, who is stronger? Regarding who is stronger and who is weaker among the totem clans, don't say that we can't say it clearly. Even the totem powerhouses themselves cannot say it clearly. Because of this, between the totem powerhouses, there are open and covert struggles. The Karakoram Immortal clan of the Illusion Heavenly Lake once sent elite warriors to challenge the Xian Yuan clan. When he said here, Qin Yunran shot a glance at Qin Wushuang and laughed. Of course, it is widely rumored in the outside world that this challenge was due to emotional entanglement and not due to personal feelings. All right, this is a digression. Let's not talk about it. I asked you guys to come here mainly to remind you. When you go to the Illusion Heavenly Lake, you must remember one problem, the most important problem. What problem? Everyone was curious. Remember, regardless of how many women you meet that move your heart, or how many soul-stirring stories occur, don't forget to not get involved with the female martial artists of the Illusion Heavenly Lake. Of course, you must not touch the disciples of the Karakoram Immortal clan of the Totem clan. You must also not touch the disciples of the other 6 major Taoist sections. Those 6 major Taoist sects are equivalent to the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates of the Xian Yuan Mound. Almost all of them are female martial artists. If any of you get entangled with the female disciples of the Illusion Heavenly Lake, it means you are in big trouble. These young people all started to chuckle. However, Qin Wushuang was extremely calm. Since he already had Murong Su, of course he would not get involved with any emotional entanglements. For the others, for the time being, they did not have any emotional experience. They lived their days like ascetic monks and did not know about the matters between men and women. Because of this, Qin Yunran had especially instructed them. It was because the more one did not have any emotional experience, the easier it would be for them to fall into the whirlpool of emotions. And once they fell into it, they would become even crazier. Qin Hao laughed. Second Chief, I don't understand this. Since they are all sects with female martial artists as the main force, it's suitable for them to form a marriage contract with the outside world. Why would there be big trouble instead? It's simple. The martial artists of the Illusion Heavenly Lake all follow the precepts. They will not participate in marriage like men and women in the secular world. If anyone dares to ruin the purity of the female disciples of the Illusion Heavenly Lake, then they can only wait to be killed. Qin Yunran was definitely not exaggerating to scare people. Qin Hao stuck out his tongue. It's that serious? It's definitely that serious. That group of women are extremely crazy. And the most frightening thing is that they hate marriage and hate men. Yet, they will take the initiative to provoke men, making people unable to control themselves. Isn't this awkward? Qin Hao mumbled. They're just that awkward. Because their female disciples have to get involved in the emotional entanglements. The emotional entanglements are equivalent to the barrier in their cultivation. They will find men to get involved in the emotional entanglements, using this to test their temperament. But don't forget, they're only using it for their cultivation. It's definitely not true love. When Qin Yunran talked about this matter, he kept away that joking and witty tone. Instead, He was serious and earnestly admonishing, without the slightest intention of joking. When Qin Wushuang heard the image described by the second chief, suddenly a few shadows appeared in his mind. The unpleasant experience he had in Bull Valley once again surfaced in his mind. A thought suddenly flashed across his mind. Could it be? Could it be that those women are from the illusion Heavenly Lake? To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 645. Such a strange thought flashed across Qin Wushuang's mind. He could not refrain from remembering the humiliating experience he had encountered at the Bull Valley. The tyrannical and arrogant behavior of that woman in imperial clothing had filled Qin Wushuang's heart with anger when he thought about it now. That humiliating experience at the Bull Valley was also viewed by Qin Wushuang as the greatest humiliation of his life. After sweeping away those distracting thoughts from his mind, Qin Wushuang stopped thinking about it. Even if he were to consider these questions now, he would not have an answer. He could only take one step at a time. He believed that if those women were truly people of the illusion Heavenly Lake, he would certainly meet them. Even if he could not meet them, he could inquire about them. Early next morning, the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates departed again. After crossing the border of the Fantasy Moon Prefecture, they stepped onto the land of the illusion Heavenly Lake. The illusion Heavenly Lake was different than the endless Eastern Sea. The main terrain of the endless Eastern Sea still belonged to the surface of the sea. Although the illusion Heavenly Lake had the name of the Heavenly Lake, in fact it was mainly land. Among the 5 forbidden spiritual zones, the illusion Heavenly Lake was the one with the highest terrain and the most upright mountain range. Especially the Kunlun mountain range, where the Karakoram Immortal Clan was located. It extended for millions of miles and was the supreme totem of the illusion Heavenly Lake. The origin of the name of the illusion Heavenly Lake was the most sacred peak of the Karakoram Immortal Clan. There was a vast lake water like a fairyland called the illusion Heavenly Lake. Because of the existence of this lake, it was named the illusion Heavenly Lake. The entire forbidden spiritual zones were also named because of it. After the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates entered the territory of the illusion Heavenly Lake, they immediately felt the difference of local conditions and customs between the two places. The deeper they went, the more obvious the difference of local conditions and customs became. Just when they arrived at a pass, suddenly, the clouds rose up from the front. Above a large village, a row of strange-shaped flying boats welcomed them. The shape of this flying boat was somewhat similar to the airplanes from Qin Wushuang's former world. When Qin Wushuang saw this flying boat flying over, he was truly astonished. At this moment, a figure appeared before the flying boat. This person transformed into his body and came and went freely. Indeed, he was an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao. This person cupped his hands in a salute and said with a smile, "May I ask if the honorable guests of the Heavenly Emperor 8 sects have arrived?" The leader of the Heavenly Emperor Gate, Xan Tianshun, the younger brother of the Heavenly Emperor, also returned the bow. He said with a smile, "That's us. May I ask who you are?" That person was dressed in a long robe and had a few strands of thin beard. He had the air of a transcendent being. "You are indeed honored guests." "Very good. I am Liu Yixiao from the Flying Rainbow Taoist sect of the Kunlun Immortal Clan." He had received the Immortal Sect's decree to welcome the distinguished guests. 6, 8, 48, exactly 48 people. Thus, I infer that you are the honored guests of the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates. Ha! Fellow Taoist Liu is really considerate. Seemingly, Xine Tianxian had deliberately made friends with him as he laughed. "We were just worried about how to get to that Karakoram Celestial Mountain." Liu Yixiao pointed at the flying ships behind him and said with a smile, "These are the Immortal Leaf flying ships specially sent by Kunlun Immortal Clan. There are exactly 8 of them. Each sect will have one. Everyone, please." Xine Tianxian looked back at everyone with some difficulty. Before departing, The Heavenly Emperor had set 3 rules. The first one clearly stated that the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates would move together and not be left alone. However, if they were to board this immortal leaf-flying ship, they must be left alone. It seemed to be inconsistent with the decree of the Heavenly Emperor. However, this flying ship was sent by the Karakoram Immortal Clan. The Karakoram Immortal Clan was the totem clan of the Illusion Heavenly Lake. They held a much higher position than the Heavenly Emperor of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Most likely, the decree of the Heavenly Emperor would not hold enough weight when encountering the invitation of the totem clan. What? Lu Yixiao carried a smile on the corner of his mouth. Friends, could you have some doubts? Xiantianshan immediately laughed. How could I dare? How could I dare? Instantly, he decided to act flexibly. For the current situation, even if the Heavenly Emperor learned about it after they returned, he would not blame them. Instantly, he waved his hand. Everyone, pick one immortal leaf flying ship. May I ask, how long will it take to get to the Karakoram Celestial Mountain? Lu Yixiao was rather honest. It's hard to say. If the journey is peaceful and we do not encounter any unexpected situations, we can arrive in 10 to 20 days. If there are any accidents, it's possible for us to arrive in a month. However, there is still more than a month before the 10,000-year pilgrimage pageant. Certainly, it will allow everyone to arrive smoothly. When Xiantianshan heard up to this point, he was reassured. All right, everyone get on the ship. If they were to walk by themselves and fly into the unknown territory, it would take them at least a month to arrive at the Karakoram Immortal Clan. Since they were not familiar with the terrain, they had set off this far ahead of time. It was also to avoid any accidents. Anyways, there was still 1 or 2 months before that 10,000-year pilgrimage pageant. They had plenty of time. In fact, among the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates, besides the Heavenly Punishing Villa and the Sound of Thunder sect, the other sects did not like to move with other sections. When they heard that they could leave on the immortal leaf-flying ship, of course they were extremely happy. Qin Yunran took a few disciples and walked towards one of the flying ships. As Qin Wushuang looked at this immortal leaf-flying ship, its size was almost the same as the airplanes in his former world. However, regardless of the material or the shape, it displayed a much more perfect production than the airplanes in his former world. Qin Wushuang smacked his tongue in wonder. If this immortal leaf-flying ship traveled to his former world, it could instantly kill any airplanes. Additionally, this immortal leaf-flying ship consumed the spiritual chi of crystal stones as its driving force. Regardless of safety or speed, it far surpassed the airplanes in his former world. When he walked before the door, suddenly, Qin Wushuang asked one of the disciples that was in charge of receiving them, "Do you guys receive all the forbidden spiritual zones, or only the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates of a Xian Yuan Mound receive such treatment?" That disciple laughed and did not answer. He only made a pleased gesture. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang was puzzled, yet Qin Taichung dragged him in. Qin Taichung chuckled. "Brother Wushuang, don't ask. Wouldn't it save more energy if we don't fly by ourselves?" Qin Wushuang gave a bitter smile and did not say anything. With the presence of a supreme Dao elite warrior like the second chief, they would not be afraid, even if there were any tricks to this immortal leaf-flying ship. The 8 immortal leaf-flying ships closed their doors. After everyone had boarded, they started to depart. Just as these 8 immortal leaf-flying ships had started to move, suddenly, Lu Yixiao, who was standing outside, revealed a mischievous smile. "Silver Cicada, this is all I can help you with." "Ha ha, you're truly somewhat childish. Even if I let these people suffer a little, how much of my hatred can be resolved?" Initially, Golden Cicada lost to the elite warriors of the Xian Yuan clan. It's not much fun to vent your anger on these underlings of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. It's just to make the people of the Xian Yuan clan lose some face. After he had finished speaking, this Lu Yixiao withdrew his body and transformed into a long rainbow to escape into the sky. His speed was even faster than lightning. If people of the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates saw this scene, they would be endlessly astonished. The body movements and methods of this Lu Yixiao were much more powerful than people like Qin Yunran and Xiantianshan. The speed at which he fled like a graceful swan had simply reached the transformation supreme Tao stage. On the other hand, the 6 people of the Qin clan were sitting inside the immortal leaf flying ship. The space inside was enormous. In fact, it was extremely spacious to accommodate 6 people. However, the space they were in was completely isolated from the area where the immortal leaf flying ship was being operated. They could not see how this immortal leaf flying ship was being operated. Qin Hao sensed the speed of this flying ship and looked at the clouds floating outside the ship. He sighed with emotion. I feel that we are too trusting of that Liu Yixiao. If he deceived us and did not have good intentions, it would be troublesome. Don't look at how Qin Hao was usually frivolous. His words had hit the bottom of everyone's heart. Qin Hongyan scolded with an unfriendly tone. Hao Zi, don't jinx it. That mouth of yours is too venomous. It's both good and bad. I don't want anything to happen. You better shut up. Qin Hao chuckled. Am I not thinking for everyone? Senior brother, don't you think it's strange? Qin Taichung was a natural optimist. He was forthright and careless. To put it bluntly, he was the type that was rather insensitive. He laughed. With the chief here, it's not strange. Even if it's strange, the chief is at the supreme Tao stage. Even if this flying ship explodes, we can escape safely. Qin Wushuang said with a bitter smile. Senior brother, stop. Don't joke about this. Qin Taichung roared with laughter. Junior brother Wushuang, could it be you also believe Hao Zi's nonsense? Qin Wushuang did not have much interest in Qin Hao's words. However, ever since he entered this flying ship, he had a bad premonition. He felt that he had truly boarded a pirate ship. However, no matter how he thought about it, he could not figure it out. If this immortal leaf flying ship was sent by the Karakoram immortal clan, they would not have the motive to deal with them. With the methods and power of the totem clan of the illusion Heavenly Lake, they would not need to make such a big fuss to deal with them. It would be enough to send a mysterious elite warrior to stop them. Therefore, Qin Wushuang was filled with confusion and doubt, especially when he saw that this space was spacious and empty, yet it gave him a sense of uneasiness. Qin Jining was the calmest. He closed his eyes and ignored everything. Second Chief, what do you think? Qin Hao could not refrain from asking. Qin Yunran laughed. It's simple. If the Karakoram Immortal Clan wants to deal with the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates, we cannot avoid any of their methods. If the Karakoram Immortal Clan had not made a move, it would not be easy for the other powerhouses of the Illusion Heavenly Lake to scheme against us. Therefore, don't think too much. Everything will be fine when the time comes. The tone of the second chief was even calmer than Qin Taichung. Qin Wushuang rubbed his nose and smiled bitterly inwardly. The second chief is even more thick-skinned than senior brother Taichung. However, I think the second chief is doing this deliberately. Even if he had seen through something, he would not expose it at this moment. It would only make everyone worry. Although the immortal leaf flying ship flew at a high speed, the people inside each had different concerns. When Qin Wushuang saw the second chief acting with such calmness, the worry in his heart had lessened greatly. Just when Qin Wushuang had calmed down inwardly, the immortal leaf flying ship shook all of a sudden. Next, it started to shake violently. In his former world, Qin Wushuang often took airplanes. He also often encountered airflow fluctuations when the plane passed through the atmosphere. However, the current situation was clearly different from the shaking of the plane. As soon as this immortal leaf flying ship shook, instantly, a wave of strange blue lights flashed from the inside of the flying ship. Like vipers, countless tiny blue lights surged out from all directions. Like waves of ropes, they coiled around the 6 people. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 646. For such an unforeseen event, not to mention Qin Wushuang and the others being helpless, even Second Chief Qin Yunran, who was at the 8th calamity of the Coagulate Supreme Tao stage, was also helpless under the entanglement of this blue rope. This blue invisible rope was exceptional, and its entanglement power was also astonishing. Qin Yunran exerted all his strength to break free a few times. He realized that the power used by this invisible rope was more powerful than his coagulate supreme Tao power. Despite struggling a few times, it was still to no avail. He caught a glimpse of a few young people from the corner of his eyes. Almost all of them were struggling with all their strength. Only Qin Wushuang, despite revealing a somewhat strange expression, did not exert all his strength to break free. Instead, he looked in the direction of Qin Yunran. Clearly, Qin Wushuang also felt that if the second chief could not break free from this rope, then regardless of how powerful Qin Wushuang was, most likely it would be useless. He could not be stronger than Qin Yunran. When Qin Yunran saw Qin Hao still struggling with all his strength, he immediately shouted, "Qin Hao, calm down, don't struggle." Instantly, Qin Yunran's shout was like a basin of cold water being poured on top of everyone's head. It made these people become much more clear-headed. Qin Hao panted heavily, and his pupils shrunk rapidly. He roared like a wild beast. "Chief, what's going on?" Qin Yunran shook his head. "This blue light is extremely powerful, definitely a divine skill of the Transformation Supreme Tao stage. Even I cannot break free. Save your strength. Don't make unnecessary struggles." When he said this, Qin Yunran looked at Qin Wushuang with appreciation. Inwardly, he had a higher opinion of Qin Wushuang's calmness from a moment ago. However, the current situation was critical. Regardless of how good Qin Wushuang's foundation was, it was still unknown whether he could pass today's calamity. Everyone, don't panic. If this immortal leaf flying boat belongs to the Karakoram immortal clan, they would not need to go through so much trouble if they wanted to harm us. Qin Wushuang comforted everyone like this. He was only speculating based on common sense. According to common sense, if the Karakoram immortal clan were to make a move against the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates, they would not need to go through so much trouble. As they were talking, an even more dazzling beam of light suddenly shot down from the top, where Qin Yunran was. A beam of light directly enveloped Qin Yunran's entire body. It was like an extremely overbearing power that suddenly pulled him. Qin Yunran's body could not help but disappear along with the light. "No!" Qin Hongyan, who was closest to Qin Yunran, saw this scene and screamed at the top of his lungs. His eyes were filled with fear. Almost at a speed that made them unable to react, another ball of light shot down again. This time, Qin Hongyan was directly dragged out. With a flash of light, she directly rushed out of the immortal leaf flying boat and disappeared into the vast clouds. No one knew where she was sent to. This immortal leaf flying vessel was actually still flying at high speed. What is going on? Qin Hao's lips trembled. At this moment, he was extremely nervous as he mumbled, "Second sect leader. He's gone just like that." Qin Wushuang and Qin Taichung looked at each other and saw a trace of fear in each other's eyes. If even the second sect leader was of no help, then this situation was not something the two of them could control. "Everyone, don't worry. The second sect leader is blessed by heaven. Nothing will happen to him." Although Qin Wushuang did not know the art of judging people, the second sect leader did not look like a person who would encounter an unexpected disaster. Brother Wushuang is right. No matter what, everyone must survive. Qin Taichung shouted. "No matter who survives, you must go to the Karakoram immortal clan and complain to the 5 totem powerhouses. Remember." Qin Jining nodded. "We must survive, we must." As they were talking, there was another beam of light from the top. It was exactly the same as before. This time, it was senior brother Qin Taichung who disappeared. Qin Hao's face was ashen as he kept cursing. Knowing that he could not struggle, he said with a long face, "If I had known this would happen, I would not have come." Qin Jining sighed and glanced at Qin Wushuang. "Junior brother Wushuang, if you can survive, you must remember senior brother Qin Wushuang's words." At this moment, Qin Wushuang was also indescribably aggrieved. This accident happened too suddenly. As a result, he could not digest it at all. However, This immortal leaf-flying boat seemed to be unable to stop and continued to move forward rapidly. With a miserable scream, Qin Hao disappeared from the flying boat with a flash of light. Qin Wushuang glanced at the angle where the light disappeared and mumbled, "The mechanism in this flying boat seems to have separated us on purpose. The angle is completely different every time. What does it mean?" Qin Jining said with a bitter smile, "I hope you and I can survive to get the answer." Just when Qin Wushuang was about to speak, suddenly, he saw Qin Jining's expression change as he stared at the top of him. Immediately, Qin Wushuang knew something was wrong. When he raised his head to look, a ray of light suddenly fell and fixed his entire body. Instantly, as if Qin Wushuang's body was fixed, he could not even move his fingers and was dragged out by this ray of light. Boom! He broke out of the boat and was thrown into the endless sky. Apparently, this power was incredibly outrageous as it dragged Qin Wushuang to fly at an unbelievable angle at a high speed. After flying for an unknown amount of time, this power slowly slowed down. Qin Wushuang moved slightly and discovered that his body had regained mobility. Without thinking, he unfolded the purple cloud yin-yang wings. With a flap of the wings, he completely broke away from the control of that power and galloped in the sky. Now the sky had darkened and gradually it was dusk. Qin Wushuang looked down at this vast land. The undulating mountain range appeared to be extremely steep. Between the various mountain ranges, there were streams and mountain streams, winding around the mountain ranges like jade belts. Qin Wushuang landed on the cloud. He did not want to get lost in this sky, so he decided to go down and inquire about the way. It was better than running around in the sky like a headless fly. What's so strange about this immortal leaf-flying boat? From the looks of it, it's more like a prank. I wonder how the others are doing. Qin Wushuang pondered for a moment and knew that it was useless to worry. He decided to find out the way before heading to the Kunlun immortal clan. No matter what, this matter had to be clarified. Landing in the wilderness, Qin Wushuang found a secluded cave and rested for the night. He calmed his mind and organized his thoughts. Unknowingly, the sky was bright. Qin Wushuang opened his eyes and felt the morning sun of the illusion heavenly lake. Inwardly, he was slightly reassured. After organizing everything from beginning to end, Qin Wushuang felt that his intuition was correct. He should not have entered that immortal leaf-flying boat at that time. Although that Lu Yixiao appeared harmless, Qin Wushuang felt something was wrong when he looked at him. It seemed that most likely Lu Yixiao was behind this matter. I just don't know. Who is that Lu Yixiao? Inwardly, Qin Wushuang was also curious. However, he knew that it was useless to ponder and he would not get any answers. Just when Qin Wushuang was about to step out of the cave, suddenly, he remembered something. He stepped back and put on the heart illusion mask. Then he took out a set of clothes from the storage ring. With this change, he immediately changed his face. This was not because Qin Wushuang was overly cautious, but because he had considered many unexpected situations. If that immortal leaf-flying boat belonged to the Karakoram immortal clan, certainly they would not make a move against the Qin clan. Certainly, everyone at the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates had a share. This way, most likely people of the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates had been scattered. In this case, if he was unlucky, most likely he would encounter people from the Heavenly Punishing Villa and the Sound of Thunder sect. It would not matter if it were ordinary core disciples. Qin Wushuang would not fear them. However, for the Heavenly Punishing Villa and the Sound of Thunder sect, the leaders were all elite warriors of the Supreme Tao. Regardless of Lei Ming or Yin Guinan, they were not people Qin Wushuang could deal with. Although Qin Wushuang was confident, he would not be blindly optimistic. 4 Supreme Tao elite warriors, even if they were at the Coagulate Supreme Tao stage, certainly they would not be shaken by someone at his level. Deep inside a valley at the Illusion Heavenly Lake, 2 young men stuck their heads out from the dense forest. One of them said, "Senior Brother Luo, this should be the outer area of the 10,000 Flower Valley, right?" "Yes, according to the map, this should be the 10,000 Flower Valley." That young man nodded. Revealing a shrewd expression, he observed the movements around him with vigilance. I hope the fourth Tao warrior will come soon. Come soon? It's not good to come early, right? The 10,000-year pilgrimage pageant has not started, and the elite warriors of each sect have not left. We don't have much chance. There's the so-called saying of seeking riches and honor amidst danger. Do you think that only the heavenly Luo Daoist sect can get the information? Certainly the other powerhouses will also act upon hearing the news. To get that thing, we must do it early. Luo Yi's expression was firm as he revealed a duty-bound attitude. If the fourth Tao warrior does not arrive in time, I will enter the 10,000 Flower Valley first. Senior brother Luo Yi, you must not act recklessly. The expression of that Luo Zhong changed drastically. Junior brother Luo Zhong, why are we hiding here so early? Could be we are waiting here? This opportunity cannot be missed. If the heavenly Luo Daoist sect wants to walk out of this predicament, we must succeed this time. If we fail, we will not have the chance to make a comeback. When the Qin clan recovers, they will take care of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect first. Don't look at how the heavenly punishing Villa and the Sound of Thunder sect are treating us with courtesy. It's because they still hold hope for the head Tao warrior to break into the supreme Tao stage. However, the head Tao warrior did not make any progress. Once he does not fulfill their expectations, they will betray the Qin clan. These two powerhouses are famous for their treachery. It would not be a surprise for them to abandon the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Luo Yi was that young man who had caused trouble for Lu Xianlu at the capital city of the Danxia prefecture. Inside the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, his talent was second only to Luo Ting. Now that Luo Ting was dead, being one of the most exceptional young people, he was naturally chosen as the future successor of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Therefore, Luo Yi was in a rush to show off. He did not want to play the role of one of the successors. He wanted to be the one and only one. In other words, his goal and ambition was to become the successor of the head Tao warrior. Inheriting the position of the other Tao warriors could no longer satisfy his ambition. He knew that in order to stand out, he must defeat the other competitors. Therefore, for this trip to the 10,000 Flower Valley, he had volunteered himself. Although it was fraught with danger and most likely it would be a narrow escape, he had come regardless of his personal safety. To cross the boundary and come to the territory of the illusion heavenly lake, this not only required courage, but also wisdom and strength. In the Xianyuan Mound, perhaps some lucky situations might occur when you come to other people's territory. When you come to other forbidden spiritual zones, if you get into trouble, you will certainly die. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 647. As he walked on the road of the illusion heavenly lake, each inch of land under his feet was filled with exotic scenery. Once again, Qin Wushuang used the communication jade plate to try to communicate with Qin Yunran and the others. However, each time he failed. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang was somewhat depressed. Since this communication jade plate could not be used all of a sudden, it was definitely not a good thing. If he could not contact Qin Yunran and the others, he could still go to the Karakoram Immortal Clan to see what was going on. However, he also needed to contact Ing Long and Black Panther to use the communication jade plate. Currently, these two were the eyes he had planted at the Judgment and Orderly Mountain Prefecture. They were the two barriers to protect the human countries. Should someone invade the human countries, they could contact Qin Wushuang immediately. If the communication jade plate could not be used, then Ing Long and the others could only contact Bao Bao. Hopefully, Bao Bao could inform the human countries in time. Fortunately, Qin Wushuang had made many preparations beforehand, or else he would have been caught unprepared. His steps were completely disrupted. Indeed, the terrain of the illusion heavenly lake was filled with mountains. Almost every time Qin Wushuang walked, he could see the continuous rise and fall of the tall mountains. The cities of the illusion Heavenly Lake could not be compared to the scale of the Xian Yuan Mound. However, relatively speaking, the number and density of the cities were much more than the Xian Yuan Mound. After flying for half a day, Qin Wushuang finally arrived at a nearby city. This city, called the Lian Capital City, was equivalent to a capital city of the Xian Yuan Mound. It was of a rather high level. However, judging from the scale of the city, it was only half the size of the capital city of the Danxia Prefecture. Despite this fact, it did not affect its flourishing human brain. Naturally, a city at the level of the Lian Capital City was extremely open. In comparison, it did not have much local customs. Instead, it had more customs from all over the world. Qin Wushuang's attire from the Xian Yuan Mound did not appear out of place. After entering the city, the first thing Qin Wushuang did was to find a local freelance martial artist union. Qin Wushuang knew that in any place, the number of freelance martial artists would be the highest. Certainly, the freelance martial artists were not the most mainstream powerhouses in the forbidden spiritual zones. However, they were a powerhouse that could never be eliminated. The Rogue Cultivator Guild was also the place with the best information. Sure enough, when Qin Wushuang arrived at the Rogue Cultivator Association's entrance, someone came out to welcome him. It was a young man in his teens. He had delicate features and was very quick-witted. This young master has an extraordinary bearing. Please come in, Qin Wushuang walked in, and the young deacon hurriedly led the way. Along the way, he tried to please Qin Wushuang. Young master, do you need any drinks? Qin Wushuang said indifferently. Do as you wish. Qin Wushuang now had enough crystal stones, so he did not care about this little bit of consumption. The Rogue Cultivator Guild was famous for being fair and wouldn't kill these rogue cultivators. Qin Wushuang gave some tips along the way. That butler at the reception was even more joyful. They didn't get much commission from the expenses of the rogue cultivators. However, if the rogue cultivators were courteous and generous, the tips they threw out would belong to them directly. They didn't need to pay any commission. Qin Wushuang's tip was already close to a month's income for a reception attendant. Naturally, he was overjoyed. He couldn't help but look at Qin Wushuang a few more times. Only then did he happily go to prepare. Sure enough, money could make the devil turn millstones. This tip made Qin Wushuang's drinks and side dishes arrive very quickly. Qin Wushuang poured a cup of wine and drank it. The depression in his heart eased a little. Little brother, come here. Qin Wushuang waved his hand. The young deacon jogged over with a smile on his face. Young master, do you have any other orders? Nothing much. Sit down and drink with me. I want to ask you something. The young man beamed with joy. Young master has found the right person. Speaking of asking around, although we have many reception attendants, none of them have ears as long as mine. Seeing Qin Wushuang's unmoved appearance, the young deacon seemed to have realized that he had gone overboard. He smiled embarrassedly and said, Of course, looking at young master's appearance, you shouldn't be the kind to inquire about trivial gossip. If it's about the general direction, I'm also very clear about it. Qin Wushuang said indifferently. First, give me a map of the illusion Heavenly Lake. The young man snapped his fingers and said with a smile, That's easy, but Qin Wushuang obviously knew the meaning behind his words. He pushed out a few crystals. Is it enough? The young man's eyes lit up. These crystals were enough to buy 5 maps. He only took one of them and said with a smile, This one is enough. Take all of them. Buy a more detailed one. Also, keep it a secret. Qin Wushuang didn't say much, but he had explained the key issues. That young man was clearly very smart. He said with a smile, Don't worry, leave it to me. Qin Wushuang saw that this young man was smart and quick-witted. He didn't suspect him. Tasting the fine wine and dishes, he pondered in his heart. Why couldn't the communication jade token be used? If this illusion Heavenly Lake completely prohibits the use of the communication jade token, it's obviously not very likely. Then the problem is very likely on that immortal leaf flying boat. It must be the restriction on that flying boat that temporarily sealed the communication jade token on our body. Qin Wushuang deduced like this. Just as he was pondering, that young man had already returned quickly. He handed over a map scroll with a smile. Young master, the thing you wanted. In this capital, there's no more detailed map than this. Qin Wushuang made a sound of agreement and unfolded the map. This map naturally couldn't be compared to the map he obtained in the Seven Deadly Arrays formation. This map was only a large scroll. It only had a large structure and some larger areas. Unfortunately, the detailed map Qin Wushuang had obtained from the Seven Deadly Arrays formation only had the Xian Yuan Mound and the endless Eastern Sea. It didn't have the illusion Heavenly Lake. Qin Wushuang flipped through it for a moment and confirmed the location of this capital. It was at least 2 or 3 million miles away from the Karakoram Celestial Mountain. When he looked at the map again, the border with the Xian Yuan Mound was more than 1 million miles away. Now, Qin Wushuang knew how miserably they had been tricked by that immortal leaf flying boat. He looked at the map and calculated the general route. After he closed the map, Qin Wushuang asked, "Little brother, from here to the Karakoram Celestial Clan, if we follow this route, which powerful powerhouses' territories will we pass?" That young man glanced at the map and scratched his head. "Ha, young master, this question is too deep. Regarding the exact distribution of those powerhouses, in fact, I don't know." When he saw that Qin Wushuang did not seem to be too happy, the young man immediately said, "However, I do know the general powerhouses of the illusion Heavenly Lake and some general information about them." "Tell me about it," Qin Wushuang said without batting an eyelid. When that young butler saw that Qin Wushuang did not interrupt him, his confidence instantly increased. At the illusion Heavenly Lake, the totem clan is the Karakoram Celestial Clan. Beneath the Karakoram Celestial Clan, there are 6 major Taoist sects that govern the entire illusion Heavenly Lake on behalf of the Karakoram Celestial Clan. Qin Wushuang had also heard about the reputation of the 6 major Taoist sections. Only, he did not know exactly which 6 Taoist sects they were. However, these 6 major Taoist sects were equivalent to the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates. Only, these 6 major Taoist sects were different than the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates. They were not gathered in one place, but scattered across the 6 major areas of the illusion Heavenly Lake. These 6 major Taoist sects were scattered across the 6 major areas and formed the left and right framework of the entire illusion Heavenly Lake. The 6 major Taoist sects are the Amei Taoist sect, the Flying Rainbow Taoist sect, the 7-Star Taoist sect, the High Sun Taoist sect, the Snow Mountain Taoist sect, and the First Ming Taoist sect. Our Lianjing city is under the rule of the Amei Taoist sect. The young man spoke without stopping. Although to the people of the illusion Heavenly Lake, these were common news, to Qin Wushuang, a newcomer, it was extremely important information. Qin Wushuang asked with a smile, "You rank the Amei Taoist sect first because this place is under the rule of the Amei Taoist sect, or is it because the Amei Taoist sect is ranked first among the 6 major Taoist sects?" The young man laughed mischievously, and there was a trace of jumping between his brows. "It's both. The Amei Taoist sect is powerful. The 3 chiefs of the sect are all elite warriors of the Supreme Tao." There was a trace of pride in the tone of this young man. However, he gave a long sigh. Unfortunately, the Amei Taoist sect only recruits female disciples. For male martial artists, it would be difficult to even acquire the qualification to become an in-name disciple of the Amei Taoist sect. It was an indisputable fact that male martial artists held a low position at the illusion Heavenly Lake. Even for the Karakoram Celestial Clan, there were more female martial artists than male martial artists. For the 6 major Taoist sects, female martial artists were the mainstream. Those that recruited male martial artists were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. Suddenly, Qin Wushuang remembered that woman dressed in imperial clothing he had met at the Bowl Valley. Moved, he asked, "This Amei Taoist sect does not have a single male disciple." "Definitely not." The tone of the young man was resolute and decisive. "What about the other 5 major Taoist sects? They also do not accept a single male disciple." "Of course not. The Lofty Sun Taoist sect mainly uses male martial artists. For the other 4 Taoist sects, there are both men and women. Besides the 7-star Taoist sect, the other sects have more female disciples than male disciples. Overall, the 6 major Taoist sects also use female martial artists as the mainstream. This way, the male martial artists of the illusion Heavenly Lake do not have a high position. Qin Wushuang sighed thoughtfully. Suddenly, he asked, "Does your mate Taoist sect hate men greatly?" That young man laughed. "That's for sure. If they don't hate men, how come they don't have a single male disciple?" The other 5 major Taoist sects could not have completely stopped taking in male disciples. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang was moved as he continued to ask, that leader of the Amate Taoist sect should hate men to the core. Or else, they would not be like this. Haha, I heard that's the case. The higher-ups of the Amate Taoist sect are all celestial existences. For people like us at the bottom, we cannot get any information. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang felt apprehensive as he felt that the matter was getting more and more clear. He asked again, "What is the name of that leader of the Amate Taoist sect?" The expression of the young man changed as he looked around. When he saw that there were no abnormal movements, he said nervously, "Young master, don't ask anymore. Be careful not to get into trouble. This is all I can say. Excuse me, excuse me." After he had finished, he turned around and left. As that young man walked out of the door, someone happened to walk in and almost bumped into him. Fortunately, that person had a high strength as he moved his body to the side and let this young man pass. When Qin Wushuang saw that person's face, inwardly, he was shocked. There will be 3 more updates in the evening. Every hour, there will be 1 update. I will not renege on my promise. Please give a few more recommendation tickets to Xing He when you see it. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 648. That young butler almost bumped into that person. Fortunately, that person had evaded him. However, the young deacon went out to welcome a guest. When he saw a guest enter, he hurriedly greeted him with a smile. This young master has an impressive appearance. With one look, I can tell that you are not an ordinary person. Ha, this way, please. That person appeared travel-worn and somewhat depressed. Although he had concealed it well, Qin Wushuang saw through the gloominess between his brows with one glance. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang was greatly surprised. He had a deep impression of this person. Although they had not interacted much, for sure they had a deep impression of each other. Indeed, this person was Jiufeng Yunfei. Initially during the battle of the 100-Leaf Qin clan, this Jiufeng Yunfei had appeared out of nowhere at the square and saved 2 disciples of the 100-Leaf Qin clan. Next, during the crisis of the 100-Leaf Qin clan, he had also played a major role. Later, at the capital city of the Orderly Mountain Prefecture, at the Freelance Martial Artists Union, that Iron Holler had been killed by the subordinates of the Orderly Mountain Prefecture Master because he did not choose his words carefully. At that time, Jiufeng Yunfei was also present. This Jiufeng Yunfei was a disciple of the mysterious Jiufeng clan. In the past, the Jiufeng clan had received great kindness from the Qin clan to protect their clan. Now, they had hidden themselves from the world and no longer participated in the conflicts between the powerhouses of the Xian Yuan Mound. Jiufeng Yunfei had stepped out purely to repay the great kindness of the Qin clan in the past. Initially, Qin Wushuang thought that this Jiufeng Yunfei had hidden himself from the world. Unexpectedly, he had seen him in a foreign land. However, compared to his previous high-spirited appearance, this Jiufeng Yunfei appeared somewhat depressed. He did not appear to be in a good mood and seemed to have some difficult questions in his mind. After Jiufeng Yunfei had entered the hall, he glanced around and found a corner by the window to sit down. He spoke a few words with that young butler and sent him away. Judging from Jiufeng Yunfei's appearance, he should have traveled here on foot. The Immortal Leaf flying boat only picked up the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates. Certainly, Jiufeng Yunfei had not traveled here on the immortal Li flying boat. Only, what made Qin Wushuang feel impressed was that although this Jiufeng Yunfei appeared to be young, he was also at the profound void martial stage. He remembered that when they had met at the 100-Leaf Qin clan, Jiufeng Yunfei was at the transformation void martial stage. Now, after a few years, this Jiufeng Yunfei had also advanced to the profound void martial stage. It seemed that Jiufeng Feiyun's talent and strength were among the best in the Xianyuan Mount. He would not lose to the majority of the core disciples of the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates. Qin Wushuang was wearing the heart illusion mask, and his face had changed greatly. Jiufeng Yunfei naturally couldn't recognize him. Qin Wushuang silently drank his wine, wondering if he should go up and talk to Jiufeng Yunfei. But considering that his identity was very special, he decided not to act rashly and alert the enemy. Not long after Jiufeng Yunfei entered, a few batches of people entered the Rogue Cultivator Guild. All of them looked travel-worn. The moment they entered, they shouted loudly for wine. The hall immediately became busy. Qin Wushuang secretly paid attention to Jiufeng Yunfei. Suddenly, he saw Jiufeng Yunfei's complexion change slightly. Qin Wushuang followed his gaze and looked outside. 3 people walked in from the outside. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang was shocked. Wasn't this too much of a coincidence? Qin Wushuang knew all 3 of these people that had come. Although Qin Wushuang had never interacted with these 3 people, Qin Wushuang had an astonishing memory. He immediately found the appearance of these 3 people from his memory. These 3 people were people of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Initially, Qin Wushuang had gotten trapped in the ley lines. When he had escaped, all the elite warriors of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect had come to surround him. Qin Wushuang had a deep impression of those faces. Although he could not match their names to their faces, he was certain that these 3 people were people of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. And these 3 did not disguise themselves. Perhaps they thought that they would not meet familiar people in this remote place in a foreign country. However, the matters in the world were such coincidences. Qin Wushuang had bumped into acquaintances, and it was 2 groups of acquaintances. Jiufeng Yunfei, people of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. It was apparent that Jiufeng Yunfei should know these 3 people. However, the 3 of them clearly did not recognize Jiufeng Yunfei. However, the gaze of the person walking in front was extremely sharp. He swept his gaze over the entire crowd and paused on Jiufeng Yunfei's face for a moment before turning away. Jiufeng Yunfei was rather calm, as he only cared about drinking. He also shot a few glances at those 3. From his expression, it seemed that he did not care. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang was impressed by Jiufeng Yunfei. When these 3 people walked in, they were not ordinary figures. All 3 of them had the strength of the perfect void martial stage. Especially the person in the middle, who was also at the perfect void martial stage. He seemed to be much more powerful than the other 2. He should be a figure at the Dao warrior level of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Qin Wushuang would never forget the appearance of Luo Tongtian, one of the 4 Dao warriors of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Luo Henji was already a prisoner of the Qin clan and was still imprisoned by them. The remaining 2 Dao warriors were not as strong as Luo Tongtian and Luo Henji, as they were only at the perfect void martial stage. Qin Wushuang knew that this person must be one of the 2 remaining Dao warriors. Only, he did not know if it was Tian Mingshan or Zwilling Shuang. He would only be able to tell if they were speaking. Initially, Qin Wushuang had heard their conversation in the depths of the ley lines. He also had an impression of each of their voices. As soon as this person spoke, Qin Wushuang would be able to recognize him. The 3 people of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect deliberately found a table next to Jiufeng Yunfei and sat down. "Little one, bring the wine, hurry," one of the guys called out. That young butler immediately ran over and said with an apologetic smile, "3 masters, what would you like?" That guy from before asked, "Master Tian, would you like to order?" Hearing that guy address him as Master Tian, Qin Wushuang felt apprehensive inwardly. He already had some confidence. However, that leader said, anything. As soon as he spoke, Qin Wushuang immediately recognized that the voice of this person was Tian Mingshan, the third Dao warrior of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Initially, Qin Wushuang had heard the conversation between him and Luo Tong Tian in the depths of the ley lines. Thus, he was not unfamiliar with this person's voice. Naturally, he recognized him immediately. Then pick the best. That guy from before was also impatient as he waved his hand. We need to go as fast as possible, understand? Everyone who came here want to go as fast as possible. However, it was impossible for them to eat immediately. That young man smiled apologetically. Of course, the faster the better. Please wait for a moment. Apparently, that young man was also somewhat afraid of these three fiendish figures. He did not dare to act rashly, as he quickly slipped away and ran towards the back hall. Master Tian, we seem to have come too early, that guy from before asked in a whisper. Silver Hoop, don't discuss other matters here, drink. Tian Mingshan glared slightly, and that guy immediately shut his mouth obediently. With an embarrassed smile, he turned to glare at Jiufeng Yunfei. Jiufeng Yunfei seemed to be unaware of it as he turned to look outside the window. Inwardly, he was crying bitterly. What did this heavenly Luo Daoist sect want to do by sending so many elite warriors? Silver Hoop? When Qin Wushuang heard this title, he immediately judged the identity of this person. Indeed, he was an elite warrior at the Shakyamuni level of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. The heavenly Luo Daoist sect also had a few Shakyamuni at the perfect void martial stage. These two should also be elite warriors at the Shakyamuni level. As Qin Wushuang drank, the atmosphere in the hall appeared somewhat oppressive. Apparently, they had sensed the powerful aura of Tian Mingshan and his two people. Although those freelance martial artists loved to gossip, they did not dare to make too much noise when they encountered elite warriors. After all, among the freelance martial artists, it was good to be at the transformation void martial stage, not to mention elite warriors at the perfect void martial stage. Jiufeng Yunfei was the first to stand up to pay the bill. It seemed that he was somewhat vigilant against Tian Mingshan and his two people. Thus, he planned to leave after he had finished the food. Just as he left the table, suddenly, that Shakyamuni Silver Hoop slapped the table and shouted in a low voice, Kid, don't go yet. Jiufeng Yunfei slowly stabilized his body and turned around. You were talking to me? Who else could it be? The tone of that Shakyamuni Silver Hoop appeared extremely tyrannical. Kid, you appear to be sneaky and not a good person. Speak, what is your name? Jiufeng Yunfei said in a neither servile nor overbearing tone. With my identity, I don't seem to have the obligation and need to inform you, right? Shakyamuni Silver Hoop laughed eerily. Is that so? Jiufeng Yunfei shook his head with a cold sneer and turned to leave. He knew that before these three people, he must not show his cowardice. Once he showed his cowardice, things would become even more difficult. Jiufeng Yunfei lifted his foot and walked to the aisle. Just as he was about to walk towards the door, that Shakyamuni Silver Hoop shouted, Kid, if you walk out of this hall, don't think about walking for the rest of your life. These words sounded extremely tyrannical. However, no one could deny that he had the strength to do so. Those freelance martial artists at the scene all put down the wine cup in their hand and looked over with astonishment. From their eyes, there was a fanatical desire to watch the show, and also some fear and panic towards the elite warriors. Jiufeng Yunfei gave a cold sneer and did not take such threats seriously. He walked toward the outside in large strides. At this moment, like a gust of wind, a person barged in from outside the door. He waved a stack of papers and laughed. News, big news, the disciples of the Daoist sect are setting up an arena to find a groom. You must not miss the great wish to return to the secular world once every 30 years. Everyone, if you're looking for a dual-career Daoist partner, don't miss this opportunity. When that person saw Jiufeng Yunfei walking outside, he grabbed Jiufeng Yunfei's arm and laughed. Young master, Since you are so handsome, confident, and full of vigor, you should try your luck. How about it? I have some inside information. It only costs 10 green crystal stones. Qin Wushuang was drinking and almost spat out the wine in his mouth. Didn't they say that the Amade Taoist sect hated men the most? Why would they set up an arena to find a groom? For some unknown reason, Qin Wushuang's first thought was that he remembered the instructions of Second Chief Qin Yunran. He said that the female martial artists of the illusion Heavenly Lake needed to pass the test of love. This so-called groom search must be a trap for the test of love. Jiufeng Yunfei swung his arm and shook off that person. He said coldly, "I am not interested." That person chuckled and gave a long sigh. Too bad. Young master is so young and is not interested in the dual career. This is not a good thing, ha ha ha. Jiufeng Yunfei walked toward the outside. In a flash, that Shakyamuni's silver hoop already floated to the outside of the door. He stopped before Jiufeng Yunfei. "Kid, it seems you're not cooperating." Qin Wushuang felt apprehensive inwardly. Could it be they were going to fight? To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chijian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 649. When Jiufeng Yunfei saw the speed of the other party, he felt slightly apprehensive inwardly. He knew that today's matter would not be easy to deal with. He stepped back into the door and said lightly, "Who are you? What do you mean by forcing us?" Shakyamuni's silver hoop said with a cold sneer, "I don't mean anything else. I just feel annoyed when I see you acting so sneakily. If you don't want to leave lying down, then cooperate." Inside the hall, the chief steward who was already in charge walked out and mediated. "Everyone, if you have any personal grudges, you can settle them after you leave this place. It's best not to cause trouble at the Freelance Martial Artist Union." Although Shakyamuni's silver hoop was tyrannical, he knew the principle of a powerful dragon cannot suppress a local snake. He chuckled. "Rest assured, we will not destroy your voice. This is not just a matter of business. Causing trouble at the Freelance Martial Artist Union is related to the reputation of the union. Everyone, please calm down." Qin Wushuang said lightly. "You three appear unfamiliar. Where are you from?" Qin Wushuang had deliberately changed his voice. Naturally, these three people of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect could not recognize him. Shakyamuni's silver hoop glared at Qin Wushuang. When he saw his extraordinary temperament, he could not help but ask, "Who are you? Who do you think I look like?" Qin Wushuang deliberately showed off his mysteriousness. Shakyamuni's silver hoop did not dare to underestimate Qin Wushuang. He looked back at Tian Mingshan and clearly, he wanted to ask for his opinion. Tian Mingshan walked over and said with a smile, "Could it be you are a proud disciple of some Taoist sect?" Qin Wushuang smiled lightly and declined to comment. He said lightly, "You three, can you give me some face and not cause trouble here?" Tian Mingshan laughed. "Of course we must give you some face. However, we would not dare to ask about your identity and background. Or else, even if we did, I don't know who we are selling our face to." Qin Wushuang raised his eyebrow and said lightly, "To you three, I am afraid it would not be a good thing to ask too much. I see that you three have extraordinary strength, but you should not be figures from the 6 major Taoist sects of the Illusion Heavenly Lake. Among the second-tier powerhouses of the Illusion Heavenly Lake, I don't think you three have come to participate in the 10,000-year immortal pilgrimage pageant." Qin Wushuang had said these words because he was certain of the identity of these three people. Thus, he had dared to make such a conclusion. However, when the other party heard these words, they naturally thought that Qin Wushuang must be someone from the 6 major Taoist sects. Or else, how could they be sure that they were not figures from the 6 major Taoist sects or people from the second-tier powerhouses of the Illusion Heavenly Lake? Tian Mingshan was a little hesitant. They weren't here to participate in the 10,000-year pilgrimage pageant, as they didn't have a right to do so. To put it bluntly, they had snuck in this time. Fong, by Taoist sect with the martial, silver martial sect with Taoist, Taoist sect. The six major Taoist sects were powerhouses on par with the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates. Not to mention the fact that they were local powerhouses. Even if the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect was a local powerhouse, they were not qualified to be mentioned on equal terms with the six major Taoist sections. It was the same principle as how the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect could not be compared to the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates. When they heard about the Karakoram Immortal Clan and the 10,000-year Immortal Pilgrimage pageant, each of the freelance martial artists had a drastic change of expression. They all stood up to pay the bill and walked outside. Clearly, these freelance martial artists knew their place. They knew that there were some things they could hear and some they could not. Or else, most likely they would get into trouble. That guy that sold information also stuck out his tongue. Suddenly, his eyes lit up as if he had caught some top-secret exclusive information. He ran outside joyfully. When Qin Wushuang saw that person running outside, he shouted, "Stop!" That person was like the iron holler of the Orderly Mountain Prefecture, as he specialized in selling information for a living. Naturally, he planned to sell the important gossip he had acquired. When he heard Qin Wushuang shout, he trembled inwardly, yet he did not dare to stop. For a lowly person like him, if he truly encountered a disciple of a powerful sect, it would not be a problem to kill him directly. Young master, what orders do you have?" Qin Wushuang asked coldly. "What is your name? Don't lie. If you do, I will pull out your tongue. Don't forget, I can use 100 ways to find out your name." I am called Jean Bien." This name was rather strange. Qin Wushuang glared at him. "I hope you are not lying, or else your tongue will no longer belong to you. Listen well, if you leak any of the words I just said, you will not be spared. Not only you, but all the 9 clans related to you will not be spared. If you want to give it a try, then go out and sell that information. I know, in your line of work, don't you make a living by selling information?" Jean Bien's expression changed drastically. "I would not dare. I will keep my mouth shut, not even in my dreams." Qin Wushuang gave a cold snort. "Get lost." Immediately, Jean Bien ran outside. Suddenly, that Shakyamuni silver hoop cried out, "Wait, kid, where did you say the female disciple of the Ame Daoist sect is choosing a groom?" That Jean Bien was scared out of his wits and did not dare to ask for money at the 10,000 Flower Valley. Upon hearing the words of the 10,000 Flower Valley, a trace of strange light flashed across the eyes of Tian Mingshan and the others. Qin Wushuang observed their expressions and made some guesses inwardly. Could it be that the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect was going to that 10,000 Flower Valley? Although Qin Wushuang had discovered some problems, he remained calm and collected and did not expose him. Clearly, Tian Mingshan was restraining his fear from the domineering attitude displayed by Qin Wushuang. If it were only this person, it would be easy to handle. If the other party was truly a disciple of the 6 major Taoist sects, then he must not offend him. Or else, it would be a big question whether the 3 of them could return to the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect. Shooting a glance at Jiu Fong Yunfei, Tian Mingshan made up his mind and said, "Since you have spoken, today's matter will end here. Kid, consider yourself lucky." Jiu Fong Yunfei looked at Tian Mingshan and the others with a cold sneer. "I hope you guys will also be lucky." Tian Mingshan twisted his brow. "Kid, what do you mean?" "Whatever you mean, I mean." Jiu Fong Yunfei opposed him with equal harshness, for he was not afraid of these 3 people. Inwardly, Tian Mingshan was furious. A moment ago, when he was outside, he had sensed that Jiu Fong Yunfei was sizing them up. Thus, he became somewhat suspicious of him. "Kid, you truly think we would not dare to beat you up?" Jiu Fong Yunfei said lightly. "If you want to fight, just do it. I'm only afraid that you guys will lose your lives here before you can walk out of this Lianjing city." Through his previous observation, Jiu Fong Yunfei also realized that these 3 had come to the Illusion Heavenly Lake after crossing the border and restraining their fear of the local powerhouses. Thus, when he grasped the weakness of the other party, he was not as scared inwardly. Tian Mingshan sneered and said, "Kid, don't tell me that you are also from the 6 great sects?" Jiufeng Yunfei sneered and actually declined to comment, appearing unfathomable. However, Tian Mingshan did not believe him at all. He believed Qin Wushuang's words because the strength that Qin Wushuang displayed did not lose to any of the three of them. Furthermore, the other party dared to mention the name of a totem power like the Karakoram Immortal Clan, and could even mention the name of the 10,000-year pilgrimage assembly. All of these caused Tian Mingshan to feel fearful. Qin Wushuang smiled at Jiufeng Yunfei and said, "Forget it, brother. For the sake of this little brother, don't be angry anymore. Thinking about it, brother should also be a disciple of my Illusion Heavenly Lake's wealthy family. Although you and I don't know each other, this little brother feels that you are somewhat familiar. We must have met somewhere. Otherwise, this little brother would not have stood out to be a peacemaker." Jiufeng Yunfei was shocked in his heart. How could he not tell that Qin Wushuang was deliberately finding a way out for him? If the other party was a disciple of the 6 major Taoist sects of the Illusion Heavenly Lake, how could he be familiar with him? He must have said that on purpose so that the three of them would back off. Initially, when Jiufeng Yunfei saw Qin Wushuang's extraordinary temperament, and how Qin Wushuang was able to determine that these three were not elite warriors of the Illusion Heavenly Lake, he also unconsciously concluded that Qin Wushuang was truly someone from the 6 major Taoist sects of the Illusion Heavenly Lake. How could he know that Qin Wushuang was no stranger to people of the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect than him? In other words, among these three parties, besides Qin Wushuang, who knew everything about the other two parties were completely clueless about Qin Wushuang. Upon hearing the words of Qin Wushuang, Tian Mingshan and the others felt apprehensive. Inwardly, they thought that perhaps this kid was truly a disciple of the local wealthy family. In that case, it seemed they could not afford to offend him. At the moment, they could only take advantage of this situation to get off the donkey. They said to Qin Wushuang, "Since you have spoken, the three of us do not wish to create new problems. It's a small world, goodbye." After they had finished speaking, they had truly left. Inwardly, Jiufeng Yunfei let out a sigh of relief when he saw these three people had left. He said to Qin Wushuang with a bitter smile, "Thank you for helping us out today." Qin Wushuang said with a smile, "What are you saying? I still have my food and wine. How about you, and I drink a few more cups?" Jiufeng Yunfei was rather straightforward. "Thank you for your hospitality." The two of them looked at each other with a smile and returned to their seats. Qin Wushuang called that young butler and instructed, "Bring another pot of wine and a few more dishes." Jiufeng Yunfei drank 3 cups in a row and said straightforwardly, "These 3 cups are to thank you for helping me out of my predicament. To be honest, if you didn't show up today, I would have been embarrassed." "Haha, I see that you seem to have some opinions about these 3. Qin Wushuang poured a cup of wine and asked deliberately to probe. Jiufeng Yunfei looked around and said in a low voice, "I know all 3 of them. Only, they don't know me. A moment ago, before they came in, I took a few extra glances. Thus, that person sensed me. I think that these 3 guys must have some ulterior motives. Or else, they would not have acted so cautiously. Oh, brother, to tell you the truth, those 3 are not people of the Illusion Heavenly Lake. They are people of the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect of the Xin Yuan Mount. I just don't know what schemes they have for coming to the Illusion Heavenly Lake. Judging from their sneaky actions, they must be plotting something. Or else, they would not have traveled such a long distance and risked their lives here." Inwardly, Qin Wushuang felt apprehensive. Thinking about the current situation of the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect, without a doubt, they were like a clay bodhisattva crossing the river. They could not even protect themselves, yet they had the leisure to come to the Illusion Heavenly Lake. Certainly, there must be some hidden motives. Currently, the most urgent matter for the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect was to rebuild and increase their strength. All of their actions must be working towards this direction. When he thought here, instantly, the anger and hatred inside Qin Wushuang's heart was ignited again. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 650. This Jiu Fong Yunfei was rather magnanimous and upright. Qin Wushuang did not expect that Jiu Fong Yunfei would admit these things. For the time, he felt that he was not upright. With a chuckle, he put down the wine cup. When Jiu Fong Yunfei saw him laugh abruptly, Qin Wushuang suddenly waved his hand to motion Jiu Fong Yunfei to stop talking. It was because currently there was not a single person in the entire guild hall. However, he was afraid that the walls had ears. Jiu Fong Yunfei was a smart person, as he immediately realized. Inwardly, he was impressed by this young man before him. Indeed, he was experienced. Jiu Fong Yunfei was used to traveling in the world. However, in the end, he was not thorough enough in these details. Next, these two did not talk about anything else. Instead, they talked about some trivial matters related to training. Only when most of the food and drinks had been consumed did Qin Wushuang stand up with a long laugh. "Brother, I feel familiar with you at first sight. How about we go out for a walk?" "Okay." Just when Jiu Fong Yunfei was about to pay the bill, Qin Wushuang put down a green crystal stone with a smile. "Let's go." Immediately, these two left the guild and walked out of the city. When they arrived at the desolate outskirts of the city, Jiu Fong Yunfei gave a long sigh. "You are so cautious. Could it be you are worried that the walls have ears?" "I'm not worried, but indeed the walls have ears," Qin Wushuang said lightly. When that general manager that mediated the fight walked into the back hall, his footsteps disappeared behind the door. It's clear that he is hiding behind the door. Jiu Fong Yunfei was greatly surprised. "You have such sharp ears." Although Qin Wushuang was only at the profound void martial stage, in terms of spiritual perception, even those at the perfect void martial stage might not be as powerful as him. After all, he had received the baptism of the divine light. His spiritual perception was abnormally powerful and could almost be compared to elite warriors of the supreme Tao. "Small tricks, not worth mentioning," Qin Wushuang said modestly. Suddenly, his complexion changed slightly as he said with a bitter smile, "Trouble is here." "Trouble?" Jiu Fong Yunfei frowned slightly. "Yes, those three guys from a moment ago are lingering and have followed us." Qin Wushuang gave a light sigh. Jiu Fong Yunfei's expression turned cold. "You got guts." Qin Wushuang shook his head. "Let's go. We won't play with them for now. Let's find a safe place to talk." The two of them exchanged glances and looked up to see a deep forest in front of them. Naturally, they passed through it. Since Qin Wushuang knew that the three of them were chasing after him, he naturally wouldn't leave behind any clues for them to follow him. Instead, he destroyed his aura along the way, creating many puzzles. Seeing that Qin Wushuang's methods were experienced, Jiu Fong Yunfei could not help feeling deep admiration. The two of them passed through the forest and finally arrived near a secluded cave. Qin Wushuang raised his head and looked at the cave. He smiled and said, "Let's not go in. We'll go around this cave." Qin Wushuang laughed when they reached the depths of the mountain. "It's about time. Those three guys are still playing hide-and-seek in the deep forest." Jiu Fong Yunfei was very impressed, but he felt a little strange. Why was he so sure that he could even know where those three people were? Qin Wushuang smiled and said, "I have some small methods that can lock onto their position." This was not some small method. Jiu Fong Yunfei was very clear that if he could really lock onto the other party's position, that would be a great divine ability. Qin Wushuang naturally did not rely on divine abilities, but that observant finger jade disc. As long as this thing collected a trace of the other party's aura, it could clearly indicate the other party's position. Furthermore, as long as the distance was close, it could even lock onto the specific position. Jiu Fong Yunfei was deeply impressed. He sighed and said, "Brother is worthy of being a disciple of the 6 great Tao sects. Your various methods make me feel ashamed of my inferiority." Qin Wushuang smiled and did not speak. He took out the sealed scroll and summoned the 2 spiritual beasts. Toad Palace, Jade Hair, and Sky Pilfered Mole. He gave them a few instructions and had them stand guard outside. As long as someone approached, Qin Wushuang would be alerted at the first moment. After Qin Wushuang finished doing all this, he smiled and said, "Now, this place is absolutely safe. No need to worry about the walls having ears." Jiufeng Yunfei saw Qin Wushuang's serious appearance and could not help but feel somewhat strange. He thought to himself that they had met by chance. Even if they hit it off very well, it seemed like there was no need to find such a remote place and speak so cautiously, right? Could it be that he was really afraid of being overheard? Qin Wushuang saw Jiufeng Yunfei's strange expression and guessed his meaning. He smiled and said, "Brother Jiufeng, what are you thinking about?" Jiufeng Yunfei was stunned. Suddenly, his expression changed. Brother Jiufeng? He remembered that he did not seem to have told him his name. Could it be that he could even deduce this? No. Jiufeng Yunfei's mind was in a mess. This voice was very familiar. He must have heard it before. Jiufeng Yunfei's mind spun rapidly. Qin Wushuang had already put away his mask and revealed his original appearance. "Brother Jiufeng, do you still remember me? You are Qin Wushuang?" Jiufeng Yunfei realized the light, and a look of disbelief filled his eyes. "It's you. It's unbelievable." Qin Wushuang laughed. "A few years have passed since we parted at the capital city of the Orderly Mountain Prefecture. I did not hear any news of you, and thought you had already returned to your clan to live in seclusion. I didn't expect that we would meet again in a foreign country." Jiufeng Yunfei was also pleasantly surprised. "Brother Wushuang, it's really you, that's great. When I saw the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, I was worried that I could not deal with them. It's great that you are here." "Deal with them?" Qin Wushuang was stunned. "Brother Jiufeng has a grudge with them?" Jiufeng Yunfei shook his head. "I don't have a grudge with them. However, I know that the heavenly Luo Daoist sect is the sworn enemy of the Qin clan. They must be scheming something by coming to this illusion heavenly lake. The Qin clan has saved the Jiufeng clan. Therefore, the Jiufeng clan is duty-bound to help the Qin clan. I am worried that the heavenly Luo Daoist sect has come here because they want to acquire something to deal with the Qin clan. Or else, with their situation, it's impossible for them to leave their homeland and come here." This thought happened to coincide with Qin Wushuang's. Qin Wushuang nodded seriously. "Brother Jiufeng's words are reasonable. It seems that the heavenly Luo Daoist sect has come here with bad intentions. However, since they are here, we must give them a surprise. It's good that we can settle the old and new grudges together." Jiufeng Yunfei said with surprise, "Brother Wushuang, you're going to start a war with them?" Qin Wushuang revealed a mysterious smile. "No rush. I'm going to see what they are scheming. Then I will consider the issue of starting a war." When Jiufeng Yunfei saw Qin Wushuang had a card up his sleeve, it was inappropriate for him to say anything. He only said, "Those three should be at the perfect void martial stage, right?" Qin Wushuang knew that Jiufeng Yunfei was reminding him to not underestimate the enemy. In fact, how could Qin Wushuang underestimate the enemy? He knew the strength of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect like the back of his hand. They were Qin Wushuang's sworn enemy. How could Qin Wushuang not know about them? Of course, it was not strange that Jiufeng Yunfei did not know about Qin Wushuang's trump card. Qin Wushuang did not expose him. Instead, he asked, "Brother Jiufeng, why are you at this illusion heavenly lake? Earlier, when I saw you walk into the Union, there seemed to be some gloominess between your brows." Jiufeng Yunfei gave a low sigh, and a trace of sadness flashed across his expression. "Brother Wushuang, after we parted at the Orderly Mountain Prefecture, I stayed for a few months after returning to my family. Then, I went out to gain experience. Since the Heavenly Emperor Gate forbade the Jiufeng clan to come out of the Xianyuan Mound, I came to this illusion heavenly lake. However, I never thought that I would encounter the calamity that is my destiny." "Oh. What do you mean?" Qin Wushuang was stunned. When he saw Jiufeng Yunfei's depressed expression, he could not but help to ask, "Could it be that you encountered a calamity of love?" Although Jiu Fong Yunfei was free and easy, he could not help but be shocked when he was asked by Qin Wushuang directly. How did you know? Qin Wushuang smiled bitterly and shook his head. I just guessed. Jiu Fong Yunfei gave a long sigh. As you guessed, I encountered the nemesis of my life. At the wrong time, I met the wrong person. I mistakenly entered the sea of love. With one wrong step, it was hard for me to extricate myself. When Qin Wushuang saw Jiu Fong Yunfei being so sad, he also gave a long sigh inwardly. Inwardly, he thought that Jiu Fong Yunfei could not be so unlucky as to encounter a female disciple who was experiencing a calamity of love, right? If that was the case, this Jiu Fong Yunfei would be a complete sacrifice. The female martial artists of the Illusion Heavenly Lake were all at the level of calamity. They viewed the calamity of love as a great obstacle in their training. Each time they passed it, their strength would advance. When they were experiencing the calamity of love, they would find some young, handsome, and elegant men to increase the difficulty of the calamity of love. Of course, under normal circumstances, they would put on a show, and it would be impossible for them to develop true feelings, unless a few of the fake acts were real. However, when they put on a show, the person they had chosen would be kept in the dark. Once they were too deeply invested, it would not be hard to understand if they were unable to extricate themselves from the calamity of love. Could it be that this Jiu Fong Yunfei had encountered such an old trick? Brother Jiu Fong, this nemesis of my life you're talking about, could it be a female disciple of the Amei Daoist sect? Jiu Fong Yunfei nodded dispiritedly. That's right. I only learned later that everyone in the Amei Daoist sect hates men. In that case, why did she find me? Brother Jiu Fong, this is the disaster caused by your elegant demeanor. If you were an ordinary man, they would not have chosen you. Why do you say this? Jiu Fong Yunfei was confused. Brother Jiu Fong, you should know that the female disciples of the Amei Daoist sect use the calamity of love as the obstacle in their training. Each time they break through, they will enter the Tao through the calamity of love. To put it bluntly, the man they chose is only a tool. Of course, to increase the difficulty of the calamity of love, the more excellent the man, the better. Jiu Fong Yunfei's expression changed drastically as he stuttered. Is this true? I heard it from the chief of the Qin clan. However, I am afraid it's true that the female martial artists of the Amei Daoist sect hate all men in the world. Or else, how could they not take in male disciples? As if struck by lightning, Jiu Fong Yunfei was stunned on the spot. So that's the case. I was wondering why she didn't see me when we agreed to meet at the 10,000 Flower Valley in 3 years. So that's the case. No, I must go to the 10,000 Flower Valley. Didn't that person who took advantage of me say it? I must go and see the Amei Daoist sect's marriage contest and their wish to return to the secular world. I don't believe that she is lying to me. For something like love, the person involved is bewildered, but the onlooker sees it clearly. Although Qin Wushuang felt that the other party must be looking for Jiu Fong Yunfei to pass the calamity of love, he could not pour cold water on Jiu Fong Yunfei if he was unwilling to face this fact. He could only say, then let's go and see. Just in time, I also want to see what is going on with that Amei Daoist sect. Qin Wushuang was not concerned about the marriage contest between the female martial artists of the Amei Daoist sect. He wanted to inquire about that woman in imperial clothing and the whereabouts of Shui Rulin. Especially for an innocent girl like Shui Rulin, it would be a form of destruction in disguise if she was taken away by that shrew. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chijian.com. More chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.